Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, when you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. Onmachtige God, ons bid dat u gedreend ons vergaderings. Ons dien wat u gewesel sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou. En dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom. En al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo. Umisele Nkosi ukulunga phondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika. Abantwana bayo. Khokhela Nkosi inkokheli zayo. Inike uxolo Nkosi iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may all be seated. Honorable Premier, honorable members, leaders of political parties, stakeholders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. As you are well aware, for the honorable members who are in the virtual platform, this is a hybrid session. We have the honorable members here in the chamber, and you also have the honorable members who are connected by electronic means. So this is a hybrid session, and I would like to encourage the honorable members to be circumspect of how we operate our gadgets, those who are connected virtually, and everybody in the chamber. Honorable members, please do not log into the system. You are already in the house, so do not do it twice. And obviously, we have guests online, and I would like to implore all of you to respect the rules, as you would know that if you are a guest in the gallery, that is where you are in the gallery, you do not participate in the proceedings of the House.
Hello. Hello.
As for the guests that are online in the virtual platform, please do not activate your camera, do not activate your microphone.
There's no sound from the chambers.
Not hear the speaker as he speaks.
You back,
Speaker, we can
speaker,
hear
we
you
can
now.
hear you. You back now?
You were not on for about 4 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Murray. Honorable members, I do not know what the glitch was. The ICT team, please attend to that. It could have either been the device of the honorable member in question. And of course, one of the other areas that I would like to mention is that today's sitting is an ordinary sitting of the House. If you are sitting in the gallery present here in the chamber, please do not participate in the sitting here. You do not clap hands, you don't comment, no matter how excited you become. We are all welcome. It's the first time that we've got a gallery that is so full, and we really welcome all of you in the gallery from the different communities of the Western Cape. Honorable members, and just before we begin with our order paper, and of course, there is a matter that I would like to raise just to indicate as a guidance to the members on the Sub Judice Convention. This really touches on the work of the committee chairpersons and of course of all of us as the members and the committees and this House. From time to time, it is prudent to provide guidance to the honorable members as to the application of the standing rules as they pertain to both the plenary and the committees, as I indicated. Ordinarily, this happens when I, as the speaker, am approached for guidance by the members in the House or by way of correspondence to my office. The guidance today concerns the interpretation of the Sub Judice Convention and what our standing rules provide in this regard. Notwithstanding, of course, its fundamental rights and duty to consider any matter if it is thought to be in the public interest. Parliaments generally impose a restriction on themselves in the case of matters awaiting or under adjudication in a court of law. This is known as a Sub Judice Convention. The convention is that subject to the right of the House or to legislate on any matter. Matters awaiting adjudication in a court of law should not be brought forward in debate. Motions or questions and so forth and so on. So it therefore suggests that if there are no specific rules or standing orders relating to sub judice matters, parliaments are guided by their own practices. And hence we also have our own practices in how these matters should be addressed. The origin of the Sub Judice Convention appears to have been the desire of parliaments to present comment and debate from exerting an influence on the juries, which is another arm of the state, which is the judiciary, and also from prejudicing the position of parties and witnesses in court proceedings. We understand our role as the executive, as the legislative arm of the state, and of course, the executive is another arm of the state, but the judiciary has a serious responsibility as part of the family of the three arms of the state. This self-imposed restriction by the House not only prevents its own deliberations from prejudicing the course of justice, but prevents reports of its proceedings from being used to do so. In the parliamentary environment, both local and abroad, it is common, honorable members, to find rules regarding the convention around the sub judice rule. And of course, also speakers' rulings also help in this area insofar as to clarify the uncertainty around the subject. So closer to home here in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, after much deliberation and with consent of all members, the rules governing sub judice matters have been substantially amended, and the liberal interpretation thereof has been adopted by this House. The old rule was rather restrictive since it simply prohibited any reference to a matter on which a judiciary decision was pending. It was too limiting and often stifled our debate here in the House. So given the impact of such a rigid and restrictive rule on one of the most important and cherished privileges members enjoy, namely freedom of speech, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament decided to revisit the rules, and we acted in that way. In the amended version of our standing rules, phrase sub judice does not feature at all in the new Rule 63. So Rule 63 cannot be used for that purpose. Under the heading Reflection on Courts, Judicial Officers and Court Proceedings, the rule reads as follows. No member may suggest what conclusions a court should come to. Number 2, no member may defame or reflect on the honor of or competence of presiding officers of courts. Number 3, no member may intimidate or bring improper influence to bear on witnesses in matters under judicial consideration. And that's how it reads. So it is to be noted that the presiding officers in the House has a discretion so far as the application of the rule interpretation is concerned. However, the discretion exercised by the chair of a committee or the House must be considered against the background of inherent right and duty of the House to debate and consider matters considered to be in the public interest. This especially holds true when it comes to the constitutional responsibilities of the Provincial Parliament and its execution thereof. Because we are a parliament of the people, and our responsibility as a multi-party parliament is to ensure that we are able to take at heart the interests of all people in the province. Freedom of speech is regarded as a fundamental right without which members would not be able to carry their duties fairly. This House has taken a stance that the Provincial Parliament would not be silenced on issues which people outside of our parliament would be competent to speak about. Imagine being able to speak elsewhere on any matter. You come to this parliament when you've got a full protection on the Powers and Privileges and Amenities Act. It would be a disaster for our democracy. I call on the honorable members of this House and, of course, implore you and that you endeavor to familiarize yourselves with the rules in this regard and to ensure a consistent interpretation and application of the rules. And I wish to request that the honorable members, insofar as this matter is concerned, if there are any areas of conflict, that you continue to ask the administration for support. And of course, the Office of the Speaker is always available to do so. I would not go further, and I will just end it there and say thank you very much for your attention. And now we are going to proceed with the business of the House as it appears on the order paper. The first matter is the matter of the interpellation. Is it on the matter that I just dealt with, Honorable Leader? Please.
Speaker, no, the point of order is thank you very much for that ruling and interpretation of this particular rule. Do I understand your ruling, you concluded by saying that your ruling is for noting. You don't want any comments from, is that correct? So you're not able to say whether, in fact, this particular Committee of Education should now convene on that matter or not. It's just a ruling that we must interpret. That's the clarity I seek.
Thank you, Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition. Fortunately, during the sitting of last week, the Minister of Education responded, as the member statements concluded, to a member statement by Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip of the majority party, who was an aggrieved member in this regard. And that was, for me, a very favorable response, honorable members. And of course, there was a correspondence which came to the speaker, and I dealt with that correspondence, which expanded to some extent in dealing with the question with the specific question. And I then thought it was necessary, because I responded to the specific member. I then thought it was necessary to, of course, bring it to the House so that there's no repeat of the same matter. And also, just as members to understand that the power of a particular committee rests with the members of that committee. It does not rest with the individual called the chairperson of a committee. That's like the power of this House does not rest with the chair, the speaker. It rests with the members of this House. That's why the House must ratify decisions, and that's why the House must take resolutions. But we are human beings, and there will be instances where we make certain interpretations or somewhat make certain rulings, which some could be challenged. And that's why there's also processes for recourse. So this is a way of saying it should not be dedicated to any other platform but to this House, and of course to the committees to deal with the business of the House and to deal with the business of the committees. I think the Honourable Minister Mania dealt with the matter and dispensed with it in the manner in which, in my view, was satisfactory to all the parties involved. And I would like to thank the Honourable Minister Mania in his absence in the House, if he's online, to thank him for having dealt with the matter at the time in the manner in which he has done. Because we have a responsibility, Honourable Premier, to ensure that this Parliament, as the legislative arm of the state, conducts its oversight and accountability process without fear or favor, but to do so within the prescripts of the law. And we've got that responsibility as this Parliament, and in a way that is multi-party in approach and in spirit, and of course in nature. And I think I'm talking to the honourable members with experience in this area. And of course, this now dispenses with this matter, and the matter is now closed. I hope I've responded to you, Honourable the Leader of the Opposition. Thank you. Now, I would like to recognize the Honourable the Minister of Health, Dr. Noma French Mbombo Ngubane.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you to on the member Clerk for the question. Speaker, before I just respond to the question, I just want to acknowledge the young people accompanied by some adults coming from all the way from Beaufort West. Away Beaufort West. Also, Speaker, because I think it's the first time that I'm coming to the House ever since the pandemic, I am comfortable to advise that we don't need these now anymore. The scientists have proven that it is in the air. So it's not about we don't need all of this. Thank you, Speaker. Now, the question that you have brought to my attention is about the porters. The department was only made aware of such isolated allegations during the last protest by the porters contracted by an outsourced service provider at the Grooteskier Hospital. And service providers are appointed through open competitive bidding processes to provide porter services. These services are managed in terms of the relevant contracts and service level agreements. The department, however, is not involved in labor disputes between contracted suppliers and their staff. Background to the issue which led to the protest at the GSH, it was related to the transfer of staff from the previous service provider to the one that was awarded the new contract. In the previous contracts, the personnel were simply transferred from the old service provider to the new service provider. Hence, a number of porters have been working at the hospital actually for more than 20 years, irrespective of the change of contractor. Unfortunately, for this particular one, the contractor did not use those ones that were coming from the previously. Instead, they brought in about 100 new porters to fulfill their contractual obligations with the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize the Honorable Member Kreko.
Thanks, Somlo, and thanks to the Minister for the response. Indeed, we did bring this thing on the 9th of February 2022 to the attention of the Department Minister. And we have made a correspondence to your office regarding that situation. And this is after we were approached by these porters, and we were looking for a serious, amicable solution in that regard. But we could not be able to get any satisfactory response, either from provincial executive officer that were chief executive officer that were referred to, or the CEO of the Grooteskier Hospital, in trying to bridge the gap that was there. But what we have noted also, Minister, is that through the outsourcing that is happening, the contractual agreements that are there between the department and the service provider, the report that we have received from contractual agreement has been agreed upon. They are not actually getting, in terms of salary, what they've been agreed. It has been agreed upon between the department and the service provider, which leaves them with a slave wage in their hands. So now what we want to hear from your side as a department is that what is the means that you are trying to do away with the outsourcing of basic services that are on a daily basis needed at the hospital level, where our people find themselves easily being exploited by what we call it, the private companies that the department is always utilizing, such as security guards, the cleaners, and as well as porters. And the other issue is that we have noted that these people have been there for close to 20 years without permanent employment, and they are referred to as just contractual workers. Is the department satisfied with such kind of situation of people being exploited in that particular fashion? Thanks very much, Solo.
Thank you, Honorable Kreko. I now recognize Honorable Kaiser Philand.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you for the response, Minister. Through you, Speaker, Minister, on an already pressurized system, the decision to outsource can have the advantages of leveraging resources and can allow the department to capitalize on the expertise needed for a particular service. At the end of the day, this can be perceived as a business decision that allows a hospital to fulfill its mandate. In terms of the overall staff budget for porters, are more jobs being created through outsourcing than permanently employing porters in relation to the cost to company in terms of training and benefits. And also through you, Speaker, if the Minister can perhaps just provide some insight into the acquiring of these services. And is it so that the facility ultimately then becomes the client after the completion of the process? And hence one cannot think that the facility should then be able to intervene in matters relating to staff as that compromises labour practice. If the Minister can perhaps just respond and provide some insight. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable August.
Thank you, Speaker. Unemployment is rife in the country and in the Western Cape. Workers being exploited by agencies contracted by the provincial government and more specifically by the Department of Health are opportunistic and seeking maximum benefit as the desperation for jobs is alarmingly high and the economy is not favorable to anyone who is unemployed. Not only is this completely wrong, but goes against the labor practices, laws and regulations in place to protect workers from such harmful behavior. Exploitation happens when workers are ill-informed about labor practices and that the basic conditions of employment set out in legislation to create a conducive working environment for both employer and employee. Speaker, I'm calling on the Department of Health to intervene and educate and train workers to know their rights in the workplace and how they can best protect themselves legally against employers seeking to exploit, abuse, and intimate staff members. Times are hard for everyone, but these conditions should not be used by companies as an opportunity to misuse personnel, knowing that desperation of unemployment will silence workers. MEC Mbombo should consider the proposal of insourcing workers permanently, as they often serve as a measure of protecting the employee against retrenchment, provides job security, and allows workers to grow in their place of employment. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable August. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Member Ben Focha.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, let me also acknowledge the health activists from Ceres in the House. I thank the Honourable Member for bringing this important matter before the House. I want to propose to the Standing Committee Chair, Member Philander, that an urgent committee meeting be convened to discuss the exploitation of workers employed by these agencies and the department over-reliance on agency personnel and more specifically the contracts for porters in our hospitals. Failure to do so will confirm the Chair resolve to caution the MEC and the department from accountability. Speaker, during our oversight visit to Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain District Hospital, the challenges of the department's over-reliance on agency personnel were laid bare. Not only are these agency personnel expensive as they cost almost double the cost of employing a permanent staff member, but they also present serious challenges for management as they are accountable to their agency and not to the hospital. Even the hospital management no longer want these agency personnel. We reiterate our call for the department to employ permanent staff and end its over-reliance on agency personnel. What are the reasons for this over-reliance? Is the department captured by this agency, or is someone getting kickbacks from the agency? We condemn in strongest possible terms the exploitation of health workers in hospitals and demand an urgent intervention by the department and MEC. We reiterate our call for the department to stop its over-reliance on agency personnel. This is akin to the department's support for labor brokers. It must be abolished, as it seems that this department has been captured by this agency. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Ben Focha. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Preko.
Thank you, Somlo. The department cannot claim that it is not aware of this modern day slavery called labor brokering and outsourcing of services. As much as we appreciate that fact that there would be creation of jobs and outsourcing of critical services that the department cannot be able to provide, and then outsource to private companies that must assist the department in order to function. But it should not be utilized as a gap that will open the doors of exploitation of our people by labor brokers. They know very well that if they pay a certain hourly rate as a department to a worker, then an agency will take a certain commission that result in those workers not having anything on their table at the end of the day. And another reason that the department is doing all this is to avoid paying workers their benefits. Our people do not have any access to Provident Fund, do not have any access to medical aid or any other thing. So this is a shortcut that the department would come back and respond and saying that, no, it has no responsibility in intervening on issues that affect workers. And then what we have noted also, Minister, is that the current company that has been outsourced now did not take those workers, and hundreds of those people left without any job in hand. And then ultimately thousands of their family members were affected by this. So in terms of your own conscience, because we understand you are the only department that normally respond to community issues, especially when after you have faced in the issue of 24/7 services to clinics. So we understand that the Department of Health is always there to listen. We have noted this exploitation that is happening of our people that are being, of services that are being outsourced. Is there any consideration from the department to be able to bring adequate services to our people by employing permanent employees as far as to those that have been outsourced all this time? Thank you very much, Somo.
Thank you, Honorable Kheko. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The question here is about a service provider that underwent a process of bidding through the tender. And as according to the PPPFA, which is the procurement aspect of it, provincial procurement aspect framework, that was given a tender. It is not an agency that we're talking about, that Ungonde is talking about Provincial. It's not an agency work. It is a company that underwent a bidding when the tender was advertised. And it's not the first time, specifically this one, that we have a new service provider for porters at Provincial Hospital. In the past, for the other companies, it will be where they will absorb the same or part of the staff. That's why you'll find that some of them will have been there for 10 or 15 years and so forth. But it's different companies. Now, this one, that now based on this tendering, that has been received this, they say they're not going to take all of them. They want almost half, which is about 100 of those. So they themselves who said they're appointing those. Now, the issue was about what's going to happen to the others. And unfortunately, the tender system is part of the national program. And for us as the government, which happens everywhere, it's up to that company in regard to which people they can employ. We did advise, we did on behalf of the workers also to assist how they can be able to do similar what the other company have done before. Now, going forward, in terms of the outsourcing, as I again indicated that across all governments, not only in the province, not only in the local government, but anywhere, you might have some hybrid system where you'll have in-source, where we've got outsource. In health specifically, We do have, remember, it's not only the porters, the security, the cleaning, the gardening, the cooking, community health workers, the NPOs, the NGOs is part of this. So you cannot only look on one aspect. Making an example of the security, we get other places like at the maternity or at the psychiatry, where you'll find that those ones will have been employed directly, not necessarily to be outsourced because of the issue of the vulnerability in that space. Whilst in the others, you have to follow the system of whether it's 3 years and so forth. And then lastly, going forward, if it so happens that now NHI comes into effect, which is currently, even now, the whole National Department of Health and the provinces, through the national, they are looking in terms of the units, procurement units in regard to the packages of care that needs to happen. It will mean if you follow the model of their NHI, it talks about whether Anti-SARA could be able to provide service A instead of now that Kaelicha person to be providing that service, where OMPI can provide service B. So the issue about we will be able as a government to insource everyone. But my argument is about the national policy framework in regard to this aspect as being provided within the NHI. It doesn't even allow that aspect of it. It will need to have these units that will need to be contracted to render certain services. Thank you, Ngonde. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And of course, that now concludes the debate on the interpellation and the interpellation itself. Thank you, honorable members who participated in the interpellation. We now move to the questions for oral reply. I would like to draw the attention of the honorable members that there is one question that stood over from the previous session of the 28th of July, and as agreed by the House, I will now afford the opportunity to the honorable member who asked the question and the minister in order to attend to this question. The question is by Honorable Kaiser Philander, as well as is asked to the Minister of Health, Dr. Mbombo. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Speaker, thank you, Member Kaiser Philander, about the question. It's quite a thick question that is two-sided, but I want to make it smaller so that you could have also other additions to the questions. The lessons learned around the COVID, it has actually driven us apart, but also brought us together. For the first time, where you'll have volunteers, community-based organizations that come together to support people both emotionally and also materially, playing a vital role in helping people to recover and learn about the COVID, because it wasn't about health being a monopoly. There have been many role players, similar also from the other sectors throughout. And this has built a sense of connectedness, collaboration, and collective resilience in these hugely challenging times. The other part in terms of the lesson learned is about the pandemic has provoked innovative responses, which could ultimately help to resolve pre-existing programs in our health system. For example, the dashboard, we'll never have thought about we'll have the dashboard, which we started part of the COVID, but we're using it for the TB, for the violence, and also for all other aspects. And also the things like a Vexitaxi, no one would have thought that the EMS could be actually rendering integrated services outside the health system. They created a platform of having hospitals without walls. Working with the private, we have, in as much as that we have been working along with the private, but not up to the level where we say you've got more critical beds than the public, therefore we are please open it up so that we can be able to send patients there, and also vice versa, where they are saying that we are full, critical care beds are full, any other patients now, they must come to the public. It has never been part of that. The pandemic has had a major socioeconomic consequences impacting on the social determinants of health, which are those, the hunger, people, there are people who are going back to back hungry as a result of the COVID, the unemployment that we have seen there. And when we started, the pandemic started, the issue of social distancing, when actually reminded that there are places like in the college and the informal settlements and other places where you cannot be able to do social distancing. So it created that lesson even for the other sector, like for example, housing and so forth, to be able to do something beyond not only in terms of the numbers in the list. Within government, we even have the dignity and well-being that is chaired by the social development and co-chaired by the agriculture and all of those, where we look at some of these issues that will have actually been triggered through the COVID. Staff well-being, occupational health services. We used to take things for granted just because we are health. If you are working to a clinic, you've got a headache, you just can just take a Panado. But that has taught us, no, we need more counseling beyond actually for one being physically ill, because the staff have lost some of their colleagues within the health sector where you'll find that they've been wounded. Some of the, what are we doing differently? Because I don't want to list everything for the lessons. The mental health service, where now we are working together with the societal social care networks to address the broader aspect of the social ills. Also, the reintroduction of the integrated comprehensive services instead of working in silos, HIV/AIDS, family planning, but you can put all of those next to the taxi rank, all services under one roof. The redesign of intermediate care, which actually has resulted, for example, the Bracken Gate, which is about 330-something beds, which was meant for the COVID. It has been still open, but for the intermediate care, which is those patients who are well enough to be discharged, but not well enough to go home, as part of now recognizing intermediate care. The community behavior change that has been built through the COVID, like I was making an example of now these things that needs to be removed. It has actually changed us to be able to use it for the lifestyle choices for better health outcomes. So the same preaching that we have been doing, but we do use it for the other aspects of changing behavior. The design of infection prevention control, when we say that it will never be the same, we will never be able to bring 1,000 people waiting in the waiting room inside congested, because not only it's about the COVID, but there might be other. But how do you ensure the flow in terms of the infection control? We might go now to some of the new facilities for those who have got infectious disease. They've got some separate entrances, like when you are coming for your TB, for sputum and so forth. The ICT innovations, strategic purchasing, which has taught us, because during the COVID, you don't have to wait for 2 months for the supply chain to happen. Things might need to be happening now. That has also taught us many of those. And then lastly, about the telephone follow-ups, people don't have to come to the services. You can make a call. How are you doing, Auntie Sarah? And also the delivery of the chronic medications is part of those that you are doing differently. Thank you, member.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize the Honorable, the Chair of the committee, Mamukeza Philander. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much, Minister, for your response. And Minister, it's definitely an undeniable fact that the Western Cape government and the department itself has made some great strides during this pandemic and responding to this pandemic. Minister, we also had the opportunity last week in the Standing Committee to be briefed by Dr. Moodley, and I think all members can attest to the extensive brief that we received, and especially as you have mentioned, the groundbreaking work, but also on the way forward in terms of innovation, communication, and that interdepartmental collaboration as well. So thank you so much for that. Minister, since we find ourselves in Women's Month, and we have seen that the pandemic worsened cases of GBV, what interventions has the department initiated this far following the pandemic? Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you for the question, Member Philanda. You may recall, actually, since you have mentioned Dr. Moodley in regard to the violence prevention unit, what we planned, which was the commitment that was made by the Premier during the SOPA and also the Provincial Treasury, who added us at least about 10 million as a seed money for that. It will be a unit, not only, although it will be based in health, because we do have access to collect the data, and also the evidence can be used for all other sectors to come up with intervention. So for the violence prevention unit, it will also tap into that space for the GBV, because you could be able to develop policy and work with the relevant stakeholders according to the geographical area, which is the Department of the Police Oversight, already working with the SAPs. They know the area base. So they've got also area-based teams, and they could be able to see how they can be able to respond in regard to the data that we are providing them. This is in addition to the information that we collect. We have already collected as part of HECTIS is the hospital emergency centers, trauma information system, HECTIS. We already know, for example, in some areas where we have seen high number of the violence among the pregnant people. So already it doesn't need a neurosurgeon in order to be able not to understand that this is the GBV, especially it happens in the second trimester, meaning that you have to assault a pregnant woman when is already showing is pregnant. That is a whole lot of now affecting even two people, the child and the mother. So we're already collecting that data. The Tutuzela centers, which we are, thanks to the NPA, and also in collaboration also with the DSD, but there's one now that is going to open end of this month in the Victoria Hospital. So we are working across collecting the data, but also responding in regard to managing and treating whatever that comes to our fore when it comes to the GBV. And violence. I don't even want to go into step into the space in terms of the information we provide to the young girls, to the young women across as part of the many programs that are even funded by the USAID, by all others, and also from the national, the Dreams, the She Conquers, and everything in terms of the empowerment of women and girls, and also for the males. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I don't see other hands okay here in the house. Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, one of the lessons learned from COVID-19, which is being implemented at KDH, Khayelitsha District Hospital, for instance, is that of the oversight ward next to the emergency care, as patients are often kept for more than 6 hours to allow for them to be admitted in beds for overnight while they await bed availability. I just want to check with the minister, given that such lessons often lead to expenditure on funded mandates, resulting in irregular or over expenditure. What are the department's plan to allocate more funding for such initiatives as they help improve service delivery? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Member. I'm not sure exactly which ward you are talking, what type of ward you are talking about, but I will respond generally because what is supposed to happen for the emergency, there'll be people who are coming for the emergency. And then for those who are waiting for the observation, they are not as ready yet to go to the ward. There's still some, even for some of the tests that have to undergo. So they will be on their overnight observation. I'm talking about the general patients before they go to the ward. There are also some patients presenting with a mental health, which is in terms of the law, they need to observe for 72 hours. They cannot go to the mental ward or go to the specialized mental hospital because they are not as yet diagnosed. So they need that 72-hour where some of them will be mixing with other patients in the EC because you cannot stigmatize them. In most of the hospitals, this was even in Helderberg, so there will always be an observation ward. And Beaufort West, when I was there, also there are even actually part of the new infrastructure is to make use of the ward that they were using for the COVID, somewhere there by the EC towards the end of the corner, to add more of the observation ward. Because as I'm saying that, when we refer patients to the ward, it's either if the ward is full or it's part of the observation. Now, part of the lessons learned, it's about having one, as most importantly, the psychiatry unit that is a part of the observation as part of the EC. When you have been to college, I realize that we did that in 2018, where they are going upstairs for those ones who still who would have been assessed here, because previously they used to be wandering with all others in the EMC. So it's that part of that, which is now we are busy with the psychiatry unit for that. Similar with all other district hospitals, because you can't take them to Lendegeer, to Mitchell's Plain, so they're supposed to be part of that. Now, it gives us lessons learned. It gives us that opportunity that, especially if there's a pandemic, you don't end up saying to people, stay home when they need to, just because of the COVID. So you'll have an entrance for the infectious, those ones who demonstrate they're being infectious at the EC. You have those ones through the ambulances, blood and all of those. And then you have the psychiatry. One presenting with the psychiatry still needs to be observation. So that's why the EC will always be busy throughout. In some other hospitals where it still has to happen, I think member Doug Moore mentioned about the CIRUS, which is we converting the CDC there to be part of the observation ward, because everything you'll find that it's in the small EC and it's Diermekar. We have got patients with coming with through car accidents, emergency. You have got patients with a psychiatric problem of the older persons, the emergency with a stroke and all of those. So that's the lessons that we have learned.
Order, honorable members. Order. We're still busy with questions. Order, honorable members. There is no further hands, and therefore I don't see hands. I see the order, honorable members. All I can hear. Order, honorable members. You may proceed the way you like, honorable members. I'm enjoying it. When I say proceed, you're not proceeding. Honorable members, there is one presiding officer for the session. So please, I implore you to respect the rules of the House. Are there any further hands on the question? Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Speaker. I must admit, Speaker, it was quite difficult because it appears that there are others on the other side of the House who clearly want to either take over the position of the Speaker or do something. So to you, so I just thank you. That's why I was battling to actually understand, because there appear to be three different speakers.
What is your question?
This caucus is divided.
What is
as
your,
they are sitting there.
what
But
is your question?
But my point and my question, my follow-up question, Speaker, is that in this House today, in die huis vandag, is die gemeenskap van Ceres en die gemeenskap van Witzenberg. They are the people that are experiencing the conditions in the hospital, and we are informed that this MEC, Honourable Speaker, made promises to the community, and that those promises have not been delivered in regard to the visit that the MEC took there in regard to
What-
extra
what is the question?
accommodation. So my question is, can the minister tell us that after her meeting with the community, she knows when, she knows exactly when, if she can say that, why has she not responded to the promises? Why has she not implemented the promises that she made? Because this is also about the way our community lives and experiences the health system. Why? My question is, why have you not implemented the promises you made to the community of Ceres and Witzenberg? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. In as much as that the question is not related to the main question, because it was about the lessons learned, but I've encouraged the member to ask the question instead of just, I was going to say, making a noise. But I think I am, as I indicated earlier, Speaker, that there are many lessons learned where you'll find that some of the interventions are immediate, others are medium, others are long-term. 22nd Feb, that's in Witzenberg, about the improvement plan, because we need to understand that in as much as that some of these things will have been done, but with the COVID, we have to keep on adjusting. I was making an example for Ceres, where you find that the main thing there, it's about patients are coming from far. So you need a whole aspect of the intermediate care that needs to happen. Auntie Sarah is too far to go back to Optiberg. But at the same time, if he was in the metro, would have been discharged. Hence the conversion, it means that the beds that were used to be utilized to were added more for the COVID, now have to be converted. I think 4 psychiatry beds, if I'm correct, that needs units. Remember, in terms of the package, the district hospital, the deadline, the members,
Order, Honorable members, please
the
proceed.
members have
Minister.
visited the Witzenberg, and also we have made the submissions. And as I indicated, that was 1st of Feb, which is made the commitment. Already, other aspects of the improvement plan have been there, because the main issues was also about the staffing, but the main thing is about the beds. And each and every bed carries that. It's a psychiatry, it's an intermediate, and also how to ensure that those patients who will be referred, noting, Speaker, that in Witzenberg, there's only 124-hour, which is a serious. And if you are coming all the way from the Groot-Rivier, I can't remember those places where I've been to, Cedar Manor, all of those areas, not only that the road is not conducive, but it becomes, when we have gone to the serious after hours, it means that you will end up have to sleep there, not necessarily that you are a patient, but because of the issues of the distance. And then lastly, it's also the route, because I remember now there was an accident where it made more than 17 people, where they were impacted on the accident, have to wait for, in terms of be assessed. The international norm is a triage, the green, the red, the yellow, the orange, and all of those. When you are at triage as a green patient, the minimum weight generally, whether you are in a hospital in Gauteng, hospital in Limpopo, and a hospital in the Western Cape, green patient minimum is 6 to 8 hours at a hospital where there's a high level of the red patients, the priority ones. So we need also to understand that. So lastly, the question you're asking, when are you doing that? I've already done it. The thing that needs to be done now is about to ensure that all those beds are there, because the monies have been committed and everything has been there. So what needs to happen is about those beds now, they are there, but it's not about there's a U-turn around that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I'm not sure if I have got.
Order, will you please take your seat? Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Who's talking about members lying? Who's saying that? People in the gallery? No, we don't do that here. I'm glad they walked out themselves, because that was That was going to be a gift for them. You come here, you give us that, we give it back to you. You don't do that. And we've said it. I mean, I was clear when I started off that we don't participate. No matter how aggrieved or excited you get to become, I think members here will speak for the constituencies. May I then request that you proceed, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition? That's the last question.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the reason I have to stand up again and ask the question again is because, with due respect, the Honourable MEC, in my view, did not respond to the question. She referred to the questions of what needs to be done about the beds. I would like to repeat my question in regard to the creation of facilities at the hospital which will allow for sleepovers, etc., in different categories. My question simply to the MEC is, when will this be done? Our communities are sick and tired of hearing about processes, of hearing about this. And I think what's happening here, Speaker, is that the MEC is misleading this House. If she doesn't know the answer, then she can say she'll come back to us. So my question, which I have to repeat, is when will the promised renovations and installations of those beds be completed for use by the community? That is my question.
All right.
Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. I just want to say this for the attention of all the members. I had allowed you to finish your question, but I need to state this. The rules are clear when it comes to questions. The question must be, an oral question must have been submitted to the minister in that specific order where you want to receive the answer. When you then get a response to the original question, if there is a follow-up, it must be based on the original question or be based on what the minister has mentioned in her response or his response. Now, in this case, that is a new question. Now, if the minister wishes to respond to the specifics on the new question, as much as it is a health question in its sense, by nature, it will be up to the minister. Otherwise, a new question will have to be submitted to the minister on the specifics. So I would like to check with the Honorable Minister. Before that, I see the head of the Honorable Wendy Philander. Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, you have covered me in terms of relevance pertaining to the initial question. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So it's clear that was a point of order. Now there's another point of order this side.
The point of order, Speaker, is if you look at the question, it is very clear that there is a reference to rural regions. So the question is completely relevant. Thank you.
The question, I've made my ruling. The question is, following the end of all COVID-19 regulations and the experiences of the pandemic, what lessons has the department learned? That's one. B, what would it do differently going forward? So that the second part of the question is more generic. What would it do differently going forward? But what I'm saying is, without being prescriptive to the honorable members, if there is a specific response that is needed on a specific matter, the specifics will have to be put together to the minister. Because remember, we need the honorable ministers as the executive to give us specifics as the legislature. But if then the question is generic, then you must know that there might be a generic response from the member of the executive. As that is what I would like to say to the honorable, the leader of the opposition, to your question. Now, honorable minister.
It's true, Speaker, because if I'm going to be asked, like just making an example, the equality improvement plan that we committed to in Ceres, which I presented then, in terms of the infrastructure, it's a psychiatry unit, it's an intermediate care facility, it's an outpatient department. This is infrastructure. The question will be, when will this infrastructure, because we have to convert some of the infrastructure, existing buildings that are there in order to accommodate, as I indicated earlier, Speaker, that when we talk about a bed, psychiatry bed is not the same of the psychiatry of a general hospital bed. So the question, when are you going to be able to finish this? I won't know, because it's done by if I'm talking about infrastructure. That is done by, because we are the client, which is someone, or the contractor will be the ones. I cannot be able to know when will this infrastructure to be completed. Secondly, the other part of this is about you strengthen the mental health, which is in terms of the referral to the Worcester Hospital, as I indicated earlier, for the patients who have been diagnosed that they don't need to be staying there. They must go to the Worcester Hospital. That part of it is already happening. And then the issue of the human resource and also the issue of the government and leadership is related to the flow management, staff attitude, improved patient experience, training needs, complaint system, and all of those. Parts of these are already happening. So you cannot have, because it's a work in progress. So you cannot say, when will we improve the staff attitude? Because it's already happening. So, but the point that I was trying to highlight, that I will not be able to know when will the contractor to be able to finish ABC. So that's what we are saying, that I was there in February 2022. So that's how things. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Uba bekuthiwa the leader of the opposition iyakwazi uziswaza ngokwayo ngeyizibetha ngoku. Izigwebe ngoba the question he was referring to is not this question. But I've just picked up which one is it. And it is now the next question, where there's a rural and all of that. And no, and I want to thank the table staff, because honorable members, order. I want to thank the table staff because they brought this to my attention. I dealt with one question, and that is one question at a time. And then the next question now begins. Thank you, Honorable Minister, on the first question, and the Honorable Kaiser Philand and the Honorable members who participated. Now we have spent 27 minutes on question one question. So you must ask yourself, is that the kind of oversight you want to do? Because there's many questions that we must deal with. And now take to the new question, which is by Honorable Van Vogel to the Honorable Minister of Health.
Me again. Thank you, Member Van Vogel. The question is about the shortage of beds and staff in the city and also in the rural region, and also what measures are in place. One, starting with the staff vacancy, the province has a vacancy rate of 4.92% for the doctors. Because I wanted, in as much as that the member Speaker didn't ask specifically for which category, but I thought because it's related to the beds, let me just also focus on the majority of the healthcare workers in regard to this. In Metro, the vacancy rate is about 4.7, and in the rural area is about 5.6. That is for the doctors. And then for the nurses, generally, the vacancy rate is about 6.51%. Now, when you granulate according to the Metro and the rural, in Metro, it's about 6.9, in the rural, is 5.53. I don't want to go specifically to the figures, but roughly, when you look in terms of the figures for the doctors, in terms when you break down with a total 3,249. I mean, these are the field posts out of the 3,417. So it means that you only have about 168 in terms of the shortage for the doctors, and then for the nurses, is far lesser. So that is generally for in terms of the staff. When you look in terms of the bed utilization, it becomes tricky for specialized hospitals. But if I use major hospitals in the Metro, roughly, in terms of the field beds, out of 5,000 beds, almost all our beds are always filled, 85%, actually all are full. Similar in the George, out of the operational beds that are 900, almost 632 That was on the 25th of July when we're looking in terms of the question one, when it was posed. But all of these beds, Worcester and Pearl, it all excludes the Mowbray maternity because it is a specialized hospital only for pregnant women. People come in and go. And similar with the Western Cape Rehabilitation Center, because people come in and go. And also for the psychiatric hospital, which is the data can keep on changing. And then lastly, I did mention that the Bracken Gate, which was a field hospital, it's 338 bed. Now we are opening, well, it's open now for the intermediate care, meaning that those patients from the metro who are not ready to go to the hospital, to go home, but they have to be discharged from the hospital, they could be accommodated there. So it becomes a step up or a step down facilities. In regard to how we, in terms of how to make sure that we fill up all these, we do the adverts and all of the, and block adverts and recruitment throughout the year. And then lastly, the question about, in terms of the critical shortage of skills. Western Cape is lucky in regard to the critical care shortage, specifically for medical personnel, because we train registrars. Other provinces, they do, those who have got central hospitals, but we have an enough rate of having many of these medical specialists still remaining in the Western Cape. I got reminded of the National Minister of Home Affairs, where he added 41 in the list of the critical shortage skills for health personnel. And all of those for the Western Cape, for those doctors, almost all of them are filled, for example, with the anesthetists, with the cardiologist, with the obstetrician and gynecologist, they are all filled. Similar with the nursing specialist field. So generally, for the specialists who are all filled, for those areas where we still have got shortage of staff, we still continue in terms of the advertisement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. Thanks, Minister, for that explanation. I just want to say, Speaker, Member Dakmoja was very proactive. He tried to combine the two questions. So we are always proactive. But nevertheless, Speaker, yesterday.
Order, honorable members. You may proceed, Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, yesterday, the Cape Argus carried a story with the headlines, psychiatric hospitals face severe shortage of beds. What is the current contribution of beds shortages to the ongoing challenges at psychiatric hospitals, and what are your department, MEC, doing to address the increased service pressures? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Minister.
Thank you for the question. Specifically for mental health services and the beds, the whole country has got a shortage of the mental health beds, specifically now that we have had the COVID. And having said that, the Western Cape actually, when it comes to mental health beds, has got more beds than in any province. I'm just asking. I'll give you the details. In proportion. I'll give you the details now. I'll give you the details per province. I'll give you the details.
Minister, will you please take your seat? Honorable
You
Minister,
asked the question.
Will you please take your seat, Honorable Minister? Will you please take your seat?
I'll topple it. I'll give you.
Honorable members, it is our own responsibility to ensure that our house remains orderly. So I would like to request that we cooperate with the presiding officer. Otherwise, you deteriorate your own house into chaos. You don't want that. May I request the Honorable Minister to proceed, please?
So, as I indicated, sorry, Speaker, that when it comes to the mental health beds in proportion to the population, the Western Cape does have more mental health beds as compared to any in the other provinces. However, it's crucial. You don't need institutionalization of most of the mental health conditions that the country and the province is facing. Hence, we talk about the mental well-being without necessarily what we call pathologizing it. You don't need to go to a psychiatrist and say you have got schizophrenia. There are people who have got depression, like we've seen high level of depression and anxiety even among the older persons. So you cannot take that 70 or 8-year-old and then you put the 8-year-old in the institutionalized. It's similar with the adolescent that we have seen and the youth, which is most of it is substance abuse, alcohol and drugs is a contribution. They don't need to be institutionalized because you stigmatize them and it becomes difficult. What you need is a more of for the youth rehab, must go most of the rehab. The youth cafes that are happening is part of that. So that's why at the beginning of the year, Speaker, I made a commitment of 30 million extra additional for the mental health because indeed with the COVID, it has actually created a lot of the mental problems. That's why in the Western Cape government, through the Premier, we have even the mental well-being where all departments are participating, which is co-chaired by the HOD, at their level HOD for the DCAS, health and others. And then we have got our steer committee for the political heads where we tackle these issues. So what I want to say, Speaker, is about we shouldn't be focusing on institutionalizing people because it's not a solution. It should be when I feel like today, I feel like I want to commit suicide, or today I feel like I don't want to get up. I don't want to see anyone. I feel like I'm in a hole. I must be able to go to a clinic and there must be a mental health nurse, which is in the case of primary health care, where in community mental health services, we have got advanced mental nurse who could be able to tackle this instead of going there in the queues. We should be able to go to a psychologist because one of those shortages is clinical psychologist, so that sometimes you don't even know what is all about this. So whilst the beds are crucial, but also lastly, Speaker, you need to understand that even these beds, how they are distributed. For example, Falkenberg Hospital, it's more specializing on forensic psychiatry, which is those people who have been to court and they need for the assessment whether they are okay to be able to present themselves in court. And then you look, for example, for the Lentegrie, which also has got a wing for the adolescents. Look at Stekland, which focuses on substance abuse. We've got even the detox center there, and then and all others. So it is crucial to look at that. With the Nelsport, as we know that the history of the Nelsport, it's where people who used to be institutionalized permanently. We have got people there who have probably started to be admitted there even before some of us were born, early 1652, and then they are still part of that. So that's why mental health should form part of the general health. And also it must be tackled from the community-based mental health services without pathologizing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I see your hands. I just want to, for the purposes of process, I have the Honorable Kaiser Philander online who wishes to ask a question. And I have Honorable Barnes in the chamber who wishes to ask a question. And Honorable Murray online who wishes to ask a question. Now, there's Nick Kans for you, Honorable Murray. The only other sighting that we saw in the chamber was the Honorable Premier rising and the Honorable member of the Deputy Chief Whip also acknowledging and taking a seat. That was not explained to the House what that was. So may I then recognize Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, we must be very careful when we grandstand because it will come back to haunt us. And sadly so, Speaker, corruption does exist in such a critical service. And when you rent a crowd, you must also inform and be upfront as to why these pressures exist. Honorable Speaker, my follow-up question to the Minister, and the Minister might not have the exact figure at this stage, but what resources, what funding would be required from the national government, Speaker, in order to alleviate these shortages that exist? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Member, for the question. I think, again, I want to reiterate, Speaker, what I indicated, that having acute beds will not be a solution to address mental health. Because one, it's actually scary when you will be told that go and be admitted at the psychiatry. Even some of the youngsters were probably during that space of time, they will have overdosed or they've been picking and they are not necessarily mentally ill. It scares them when they become sober and they are at the EC or even in the psychiatry for evaluation, and then they find themselves with all other people who look like they are not well, because still there's this stigmatization. The only time that people could be sent for the acute beds for mental health, it's when the whole team, luckily when it comes to mental health, it's unlike with the physical health where one doctor can diagnose you that you have got this thing and then prescribe and then go home or hospital. With mental health, it needs the whole team, from social work, from psychologists, from the everyone, 8 or whatever number of people, before they could be able to institutionalize you, because your right to be able to do most of the things, it will be taken away, because a mental user, which is diagnosed patient, many people, including us, have to do things on their behalf. So that's why it becomes quite very late that you could be able to put people there. So that's why the law came up with a 72-hour, that these people needs to be assessed in that 72-hour setting as part of the general, but looking at their condition and if they are well, and then they can go back. What we have done as part of the HEPTIS, the emergency center system, where you could be able to see in the trauma how many of the people coming with a mental problem, and also among those, whether have they been diagnosed before or it's about they are presenting actually something that is acute, which is we have seen it, especially with the young people, that if so and so might have been drunk probably so much, so say the whole weekend, up to presenting with a psychotic kind of behavior, and then goes to the hospital and then get there for 72 hours, only to find that no, it was all alcohol that was in his, I'm saying his, was most of the males. So that's why I don't want us to focus too much on the beds when people have to be institutionalized. Ideally, people must be managed at the community level, and anyone else should be able to go look for help for anxiety, for the depression, for not feeling well. Because like even here, I was sitting here, you might feel like, it was too much. I need just to talk to someone, but not necessarily a shrink, but just someone who could be able to assist you during that phase that is happening, because you don't want to stigmatize mental health. Can you speak?
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I just want to indicate to Honorable Marais in the virtual platform that your name will be called as soon as the Minister responds to the next question. For now, I have the Honorable Barnes in the chamber.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is going to be very practical to the MEC. Last week, we did oversight in Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha. I'm shocked to learn that actually it's just 72 hours for psychiatric patients to be at the hospital. What we found there was 19 females in a psychiatric, it's not even a ward, smaller than this room, 19 females. They've been there for months. the psychiatric beds upstairs, they were full. How does one justify, what plan, what alternative is there for those patients? Second to that, we also understood that some part of Lentegeur has been closed. So that's why those patients are there. I'm going to specifically speak only of the female because it's Females Month. My second one attached to that, it's on the rural side. Once upon a time, I've asked a question in the House about the patients that are sleeping in Beaufort West, especially on a Sunday, on the beds there. And the minister responded that I'm speaking of the Eastern Cape. I was speaking of Beaufort West that day. Sundays, it's packed, it's full every day of the week. But you find that this department is building EMS buildings in Maritzburg that are not needed. There is an EMS. They are not addressing the real need. What plans are in place for these issues? I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Pants. Honorable Minister.
Speaker, what I said, for level 1 hospitals, there's a level 1, level 2, level 3, and there's specialized hospitals for psychiatry. For the level 1 hospitals, district hospitals, that's where the 72 hours is happening. And then once the person is diagnosed that now we are a mental health user, that person has to go to the specialized hospital. Initially, the district hospitals were not meant for that. They should be accommodating. You ask a question, remember you ask a question. The district hospitals were meant for a 72-hour. And then once you are diagnosed, you must go to Lentegeur, you must go to Stekla, you must go whatever. But with the mental conditions that are happening, actually the ones that were in Mitchell's Plain, there were fewer. Go to Kailicha upstairs in the male wards. Go to Kailicha. I'm making an example.
Order, honorable
I'm making
members.
an example.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Minister, will you please take your seat? Thank you. Honorable members, you have rightfully asked the questions. Now you must appreciate the questions, whether you like the responses, whether you like the response or you don't. Because when you ask the question, you ask your question, nobody says ask it this way. Now, when there's a response, you don't then prescribe to the minister, say, answer it this way. So let us hear what the minister is going to say. Our responsibility is oversight and holding the executive to account. Let the minister account. And she's responding in that spirit. Can I ask the honorable members to conduct themselves consistent with the decorum of the House? Please, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. What I'm saying it's about the package of the district hospital. It's ideally not necessarily to be able to be also part of accommodating the license, not the license, the certified mental health users. It's for 72 hours. We are being assessed and then find that if you are diagnosed that you are mentally ill, or for the further, you must go to the specialized mental health hospital. But with a prevalence of mental health that is actually prevailing, which is quite more now during the COVID, it made us to make a decision to have psychiatry units within the district hospital. Yes, indeed, like for example, Mitchell's Plain, when it was built, there was an additional of a psychiatry unit in Mitchell's Plain. Kailicha didn't have it. So that's why, as part of 2018, in terms of the commitments, was about that we have got that ward upstairs. Therefore, now we need to have a psychiatry unit, which is what you are saying about the serious, that we need a psychiatry unit there for few beds, which was saying Beaufort West, that if you go to the inside the EC, and then you go straight there towards the end, that ward that used to be a COVID ward, it's what now they want to convert it as part of the psychiatric unit, which is the new package that is happening. Why? Because these specialized hospitals, they are not only food, but it's because most of the patients now, you cannot even discharge them because they're still going to come back. I made an example of Falkenberg. The more you have got people who commit crime, that needs to be evaluated so that can be seen whether they are stable or they could be able to stand in court. It means there's more, and it takes quite longer for those patients to be there. I made an example that with the young people, where it has been demonstrated the abuse of alcohol and drugs, which we have seen, like for example, in Stekland, with a detox for those who are using the heroines and all of those, it means that we are unable to accommodate as many. Now the solution, NB speaker, if I could just again to do the NB, the solution is not only about mopping the floor, building more beds, creating more beds. The majority actually of the people there are here. There are many of the people who are being affected by the mental health. In as much as that you might not go to a hospital, these are the people that needs to be taken care of so that it doesn't go up to the level that you end up landing to the hospital when you have seen the psychiatrists at this level, which is as part of the commitment now. It's about, it's a framework. It's about at least to have a visiting a senior psychiatrist as well in the primary healthcare facilities. In addition that, even primary care, we've got advanced psychiatry nurse, not only sees the patients who have been discharged, who are coming for the checkup, but also for some of these walking-ins where they feel like they are not in a good space, so that to ensure that you don't have a whole lot of institutionalization that is happening there at that level. Noting, lastly, that in most psychiatric conditions, it's something permanent that needs to be managed by the treatment. So if you're diagnosed of schizophrenia, you will still remain, but you need to be managed. But it doesn't mean that you need to be managed at the hospital level. There must be support systems through primary health care level, through community-based mental health services. So mental health is real. In South Africa, it's not only South, actually there was an article that talks about the world in terms of mental health. So we're sitting as a time bomb whilst you are here. Probably me or you or anyone else might need to see a shrink in regard to that. But we are saying that let's not pathologize it. Let's work in terms of the well-being of the people. Just like when you say I've got a headache, someone said that take a pill, you should be able to say that I feel like I'm in a dark hole. One mustn't say that, oh, probably you are stressed. Go and see someone so that you don't end up having to be competing for bed, whether in New Somerset, whether you are wherever. That's what I was trying to explain. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Murray.
Thank you, Speaker. I've listened very attentively to all the questions, and I fully sympathize with the Minister. I've held the portfolio of health twice in my career, and I know this is one of the big problems. The Minister is correct. Mental health needs a whole team. It's not the job of one doctor or one nurse, and you can't cure them by just giving them a bed and a meal. But all I want to ask the Minister, what role does social services play are they part of this mental health team you've got? Because there's a lot of causes you would agree with me why people suffer from depression, why they become suicidal. And these are mostly socio-economic issues. When they are at home and you send them home after they've been to the district hospitals, what do you do? Do you leave them to that mother or father or sister at home, uneducated, poor, with no income, to see to their needs? Or do you have this professional team that still look after them even when they're at home? That's all I would like to ask.
Thank you, Akpare Murray. Honorable Minister, I recognize.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Member Murray. In regard to the social development or social aspects, actually, the Substance Abuse Act is the social development is a custodian of the Substance Abuse Act, and there in terms of the Western Cape, you will have seen that there are rehab centers that they've established through the partnership with the NPOs, and also they do have their own. In as much as that they temporarily there was it Donovo that was closed as part of the detox. But having said that, Speaker, rehab is the one that is crucial. But at the same time, as Member Marais has indicated, that it shouldn't be, it's a psychosocial intervention with a medical assistance when so when, like in the specifically around the substance abuse, when the substance abuse becomes a disorder. Hi, no me.
Order, honorable members. Minister, please proceed.
So I was saying that just I'm making an example of substance abuse because it's a majority that contributes to the young people in regard to the mental health disorders. But we are not saying when you are using or abusing drugs and alcohol, you ended up having a mental condition. But when you do repeatedly and then you become an addict, and then you ended up having a disorder, which now becomes a mental illness. So that's why I was saying that we have to work with the other sectors, social development in terms of those rehab that they are assisting with, and also with the NPOs and NGOs. Now, the other part, the adolescent, we have seen also in the spike with the suicide among the adolescent. And in our dashboard, we even tabulated according to area by area, not only in the metro, but across. And we work with the Department of Education and also social development and education. Education even has got a school social work program, which is when I was in the GRD, they showcase how they go and also engage even with the parents, not only with the learner, with the parents in the family space in regard to know your child and all of those, because the prevention is crucial. And then from Us Health, we even resuscitated the adolescent mental health services through our colleagues from the Red Cross and also from the UCT, for example, in addition to the whole program for the adolescents in Lendechi and also in Tygerberg. And then last speaker, for the older persons, there's been, especially among the females, an increase in the anxiety and depression, 40-year-olds and so forth, currently, not only Western Cape, but throughout. Among both, these are the people who might probably have been the ones who have been the caretakers of the people during the time of the COVID. And the increase of the Alzheimer and the dementia among the very old people that we've seen. That's why part of that 30 million is to ensure how we support those NGOs who are taking care, especially the old age homes, of those older persons suffering from this dementia and all of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, that concludes the question time for oral reply. You spent at least 30 minutes per question. Well done. I would have spent a bit less time per question to have more questions, but that's how the House decided. May I then request that, thank you very much, Honorable Minister and the honorable members who participated. We now, the remainder of the questions and the replies will be printed in Hansard, so you'll have access to all of them, to anyone who wishes to have sight of that. We now move to questions to the Premier without notice in terms of Rule 204. Just as a practice so that the honorable members understand, if you ask a question, there will be 2 follow-ups designated for your purpose. If you wish to ask us a follow-up question, it must be either linked to the original question or to the response by the honorable Premier. I now recognize the honorable member Pans.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the working document of the Western Cape Safety Plan in 2019 says, and I quote, increasing safe spaces and natural surveillance through crime prevention, led urban and rural planning, environmental design, management and utilization led by the Western Cape Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, the Western Cape Department of Local Government and Western Cape Department of Human Settlement, close quote. It goes on to say also, Speaker, and I quote again, rolling out comprehensive rural safety strategy led by the Western Cape Department of Agriculture.
Order, honorable members, Mazkal, please proceed, Honorable Bans.
Thank you, Speaker. It further goes on to say, and I quote again, rolling out a comprehensive rural safety strategy led by the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. Speaker, my question is, what action has been done to tackle crime in the rural areas by the Community Safety MEC? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Bans. Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Honourable Barnes for that question. And of course, I think safety is the big issue that we face in South Africa. And specifically referring to the safety plan, I think that is a perfect question in which to start. Interesting that the question starts off with the other departments and then asks about the Minister of Community Safety. But maybe I'll start with where her quote started. And, looking at the role that various departments play in safety. So first of all, let's talk about the spaces. So that refers to, it could refer to the minister that builds human settlements, and you see how the design is now changing and lighting is now changing, and even the building of human settlements are built differently. So the minister builds so that windows face into the center, children play in the center, people in the house can actually see while they're in the house, see what's happening to children playing outside. That talks to design. But even more than that, when it comes to design, if we take what we learned out of the initial partnership with the Germans in the VPUU project, where close to 3 billion rand eventually spent in Khayelitsha, if you take those learnings and what we rolled out, and then she spoke about environmental affairs, which also links to design and local government, and you look at the RCEP program that we rolled out, which is also part of that plan, and goes to municipalities, and we're sitting probably close to now 300 million rand spent in rural areas, in joining communities, in creating safe spaces, and using design and infrastructure to build safety. So, I mean, there's a whole range of them. I'll talk about probably the one that I was visiting just the other day in Piketberg, where you had two divided communities, and now suddenly through design and infrastructure investment, lighting and connecting people, a road is built between the two communities, a neighborhood watch facility with visibility over community is enabled with technology, so that that you can actually monitor connection to neighborhood watchers, your law enforcement officers, SAPs, all comes together in this control room, joining communities. And now what's happening is that even the private sector is joining on what government created as the first of this stage of safety. And now suddenly I attended the centenary celebration of PPC, and their corporate, their investment, social investment, is they've built now a center for youth, they've built a center for adult education, for disability in the evening, and they've built it in that exact same space where we've now constructed the road, the safety with the lighting, joining communities, neighborhood watches, and now we're going to be building a school in that road, and now suddenly they've also put up a facility for early childhood, elderly, as I said, et cetera, et cetera. So now you've even got private sector joining onto that nearly 300 million that we've spent across our rural areas. Then, of course, what is the minister? Because that's how the question ended up. And of course, the minister sits at the center of the safety plan, where in actual fact he has a partner component in violence prevention, but let's talk about the minister. And then in conjunction with that minister is the rural plan, because the question is about rural. And you would have seen the number of meetings, and in actual fact that minister and the Minister of Agriculture were in a platform just a week ago where they were engaging with agriculture on the safety issues.
Thank you, Honourable Premier.
Speaker,
What is the point
the
of
point
order?
of order is I would just like to ask you to make a ruling. When the Premier is responding to Honourable Buns, he often refers to minister. Now, for instance, the example that he referred to there, I was confused. Was he meaning Minister Didiza, or was he meaning Minister, I think he's still the Provincial MEC for Agriculture Mayor. So I would just, a terminology issue, our constitution says provincial minister, and the national talks about, so I'm trying to establish his response, and to understand in the case that he referred to, which was he referring to, Minister Didiza or Provincial Minister Mayor? It's just a terminology issue.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition. Honourable Premier, I'm sure the question is clear. You may please proceed.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I noted from the two inputs from the Leader of the Opposition in this sitting of the House, he probably wasn't connected to the sitting of the House last week. And I want to refer to the Minister of Education in this province, David Mania, who actually said to a questioner that they must do their homework. And I would advise him to do his homework, to make sure that he reads the Constitution once again, because he seems to be confused. He seems to be confused. The Minister of Agriculture in this province, and the Minister of Community Safety and Police Oversight in this province, who were involved in rural safety platforms, where again engaging on rural safety. And so there is, and the connectivity and the level in which safety is moving to now in the province does encourage me, despite what's happening in the rest of our country, and how the murder numbers are increasing. 26% increase.
Order, Honourable members.
We look at the GBV results that the Minister of Police in South Africa, Becky Cele, announces these shocking numbers every time he has to report on crime statistics. But the difficulty he has is when he has to report on murders and where they change. And who we are speaking about are the people of Nyanga, who are no longer living in the murder capital of South Africa because of the safety plan, the interventions, not because of what the Minister of Police, Becky Cele, does. It's for what the Minister of Community Safety and Police Oversight and the safety plan in this province does. Thank you very much.
Order, honourable members. There are members who have indicated they want to ask questions. And the way we are handling ourselves make it difficult for them to do so, because it takes more time to deal with the heckling in the House than to deal with the specific questions. And it actually stifles oversight over the executive. So I'm going to implore the honourable members to help the presiding officer in this regard. May I now request the Honourable Kaiser Philander? Oh, my bad. Honourable Barnes, do you have a second wish to ask the second question? Please proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, 2019, when doing their presentation on policing forums in the province to the Portfolio Committee on Police National Assembly in November, the SAPS indicated that there was a deep link between gangsterism and drugs in our province, and how drugs was becoming far more widespread in our rural areas as well. In fact, we have been told that nearly half of the known drug dens, 47% in the province, are in the rural areas. Speaker, what I want to know, what has the LEAP officers' role has been within the 47% in the rural areas? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Barnes.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Barnes, and she's quoting out of the safety plan. And if she reads that safety plan and then gets to understand where the deployment happens, it happens where the murder hotspots are, and then she will know that as of today, the 1,230 LEAP officers thus far, because we had another 100 LEAP officers passing out in a parade today who are deployed to the murder hotspots, because we are not the police in this province. I really do want to have control over the police in this province, because then what we would do is deploy to those gang hotspots, those drug hotspots across this whole province. That question is the perfect question to ask to Minister Bicky Cele, because he couldn't give you the answer. I promise you, even if he tried, he couldn't give you the answer, because let's talk about gangs and drugs and the anti-gang unit. There was a lot of fanfare in the launch of the anti-gang unit, vehicles, you name it. It was an election foofy. It was an election foofy in 2019. What difference are they making to those drug houses and those places that the honourable member talks about? You know, it's quite interesting, Speaker.
Order, honourable members, order. Honourable Premier, you will speak in the House, but I would like to request the honourable members to allow the Honourable Premier to do so. Honourable Member Barnes, you have exhausted your time because you can only ask 2 questions. May I request the honourable members to please behave in a manner that is consistent with the rules of the House, so that we don't degenerate this House into some kind of chaos. It's going to be a problem for all of us. So I'm asking the Honourable Premier to proceed, please. Your Premier.
Doesn't like the answer, she mustn't ask the question. So she talks about the drug dens and the gangsters.
Order, honourable members. Premier, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Speaker. She talks about the gangsters and the drug dens. And, you know, I've just seen an answer to a question where the Minister, Bicky Cele, at a national level, had to talk about how he spends his money. Now, we spent a lot of money on this anti-gang unit to deal with those exact drug dens, that the honourable member is speaking about. You know, at the same time in 2019, when this anti-gang unit was launched with all this fanfare, and we want to know what they did, at the same time, have a look at the minister's expenditure in his office on catering. On catering, he spends in an election year 354,000 rand. The rest of the years are 44, 24, and 19. The same thing comes to accommodation. So you see the minister is doing things about electioneering and not about getting to the causes of crime, which the honourable leader of the opposition talks about. And that's exactly what we do. That's why this violence prevention and the Minister of Health and what she presents on causes, on the causality, so we can get ahead of the game when it comes to crime. This is like rocket science for the ANC and for their national minister. They are not serious about safety of citizens in this country at all. They are only interested in stealing money and spending it at election time and nothing else.
Thank you. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, order. Honourable Nkondlo, I wish to request that you put the question to the minister in question or to the premier. But when the premier is responding, if you don't like the question, don't ask the question. Because the reality is that you want to hold them accountable. The executive must account to the House. Now, if you don't want the executive to account, don't ask the questions. Thank you. Order, honourable members. We are in the House here, so the rules of the House apply. May I then request the next honourable member who's going to be asking the question is Honourable Philander, and she's online. So I would like to request Honourable Philander to ask the question.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Through you to the Premier. Premier, what is the Western Cape government doing to further capacitate mental health services at public hospitals? Thank you, Speaker.
Premier.
Thank you very much to the honourable member for that question. And obviously it follows on by much of the answer that was given by the Honourable Minister of Health in the province. And I must say, I first want to start off by talking about, what are we doing? We obviously have started already with budgeting extra funding. But we have the three focus areas, one being safety, the second being jobs, and the third being dignity and well-being. And in the dignity and well-being MANCO, which is where all of the programs of government report back into that management committee, where, obviously from that process in recovery, we put extra funding into mental well-being, as the minister said earlier in question time. But I want to say that it is a scary problem that we're facing, and it is not, she says, what are our plans? I can't even tell you what I think is the quick fix. It's going to be a long-term issue that we face, and it's connected to mental well-being at the one hand, and it's also connected to nutrition and the ability to feed one's family on the other side. So that is exacerbated, and I think, by this pandemic. And as Minister Mbombo said, it's not only just what we're seeing in mental health as a norm. It's come out of this pandemic where so many people have lost their ability to look after their families. That's put them under pressure. I think the whole anxiety, we're even seeing it in children who have not been at school, not been writing exams, and now they're stuck into a system of where they've got to try and get back into those routines. It has got to be multifaceted. And we are, as we speak, that report came back 2 weeks ago to the MANCO, and then we go what we call into deep dives, is what should we be doing differently? It can't just be putting money into the problem. It's got to be, we've got to come up with new ideas, and it's the whole world that's faced with this issue right now. There are countries across this planet where mental well-being is becoming that massive issue that governments and citizens around this world are facing. And of course, that's where we've got to say, well, let's draw on the best practice we can find. Let's get the best minds together that we can find and come up with those kind of solutions. And I want to say that it is interlinked. It is interlinked with just the ability to find a job, the ability to feed your family, because they are also pushing people, over the edge. It is really a massive issue. And listening to the Leader of Opposition, who cannot actually ask a question in this stage, but it is exactly the focus. It is safety, it is jobs, and it is wellness, mental well-being, and dignity. Those three focus areas, they are our focus. They are our focus, and you can see in this government where those focus areas are being worked on, you can see a massive difference in this province compared to where the ANC governs in the other provinces.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Before you come again, Honorable Kaiser Philander, there is a question in the House. I think it's a point of order. What's your point of order, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition?
Chair, on a point of order, according to the rules, the Honorable Barnes still has one more follow-up question, the Honorable Speaker. And given the opportunity to pose that question. Thank you.
Let me say, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition, there is only two. There is a question and the follow-up. So that's two opportunities. No. All right. So you wanted to ask the follow-up, the second follow-up question. All right. May I then, thank you, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip. May I then do the following? Yes, you are correct. May I then do the following? Premier, you have responded to Honorable Philander. We'll finish. I'm looking at my time here. I am with you, Honorable members. I'm going to request that the Honorable Barnes, because we're in the middle of this question, I'm going to request that the Honorable Barnes ask the second follow-up immediately after the next follow-up by Honorable Kaiser Philander. I will no longer entertain the third follow-up by Honorable Philander because the time is limited. So I'm now going to Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you
My
very
apologies.
much. Thank you very much, Speaker. And Premier, thank you very much for the response. I actually wanted you to elaborate. Maybe this time around, the ANC will actually listen to what is said. Honorable Premier, what can the national government do, both through legislation and through budget, to assist and to improve the situation? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander, Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much. Well, I suppose the best thing, if I could give advice to the national government on what they should do around enabling us to deal with mental well-being and also food security, probably would be to steal less or stop stealing. That would make a massive difference. A trillion rand back into the system. And actually get their policies right so that our economy and jobs. I mean, I noticed both the leader of the opposition and one of their members talking about jobs, and that's critical. I mean, everything that we do needs to be getting us out of the highest youth unemployment rate in the world, getting our economy going, get investors to want to come here. At the moment, investors don't want to even invest because there's no power, money gets stolen, there's no safety. I mean, cheapers, they really need to get their act together before we get to legislation. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Honorable members, you asked that the Premier responds. You ask question and the Premier responds. May I then request the Honorable Barnes, Honorable Kaiser Philander, because of time, I will not be able to give you the third, which is the second follow-up to your original question, as per my explanation earlier. I want to afford order, honorable members. I want to afford Honorable Barnes to ask this supplementary, the second supplementary question. That is in terms of sub rule 9 of rule 204. So it's really in her right to do so. Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, in the absence of the Premier not wanting to answer my question, I would then request if I would be correct by saying, or would the Premier be agreeing with me when I say that actually this plan, this safety plan is just for metro areas and there's nothing for the rural areas. The rural areas are solely looked after by national government because that's the response we get here. That's all I wanted the Premier to agree with me today. I thank you, Speaker.
That's not clear.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. Is that the question?
Speaker, I wanted Premier to agree with me here. I want to make an agreement. He's not answering my question. He's referring everything to national government. What I want to hear from him, saying that I agree, rural areas are the function of national government. So there's no role from the province. From the safety plan of the province, because my questions are not answered.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. All right, thank you, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Order, Honorable Premier, will you please respond if you so wish?
Thank you very much. No, definitely not. Emphatically, no, I do not agree with her. And I've already told her about the rural safety plan, about how it rolls out, about the RCEP, about the design, about all of the departments that have the various roles according to the safety plan. But she asked the question about the LEAP officer deployment. She asked the question about the LEAP officer deployment. But let me tell you that in actual fact, we are already now putting extra.
Order, honorable members. My apologies, Honorable Premier. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Let us please conduct ourselves as per the standing rules. Honorable Premier, are you done?
Almost done, Mr. Speaker. You see, the problem with the ANC is that they don't focus on where the problem is. You know, if the ANC car comes along and stops because it has a flat tire, they don't fix this flat tire. They make the other 3 tires flat so everyone's equal. They really move to the bottom of the barrel. That is the problem with the ANC. And I can assure you,
The point
my
of
answer to
order,
her
Premier,
question
will you please
is
take your seat?
no.
There's a point of order. I see the point of order, Honorable Maseko and Honorable and then Honorable Nkondlo and then Honorable the Deputy Chief of the Opposition.
Speaker, with due respect, I didn't hear at all what Premier said just now. If he can repeat so I can hear exactly what he said.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable Nkondlo.
Awar. Bendicela irrelevance. Kaloku Premier benithe xa sibuza imibuzo kuphinda kuphendulwe apha funeka ihambelane nombuzo lo bekuqalwe ngawo. So ndiyafuna ke ngokuqonda into yoba xa uPremier ethetha ngemeko ye-ANC idibana phi na nalaa mbuzo wokuqala bubuziwe. Enkosi.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo.
Speaker, on a point of order, Speaker, may I?
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition, what's your point of order? You are covered. All right. There's another point of order online. Honorable Murray.
Speaker, I find it most disturbing that although we don't have translation facilities here such now, if I'm wrong, correct me where the translation facilities are. The honorable member gets up and speaks in a language which we already agreed to make it easy for members to follow will be English. I don't know what the member who spoke before me said. And if members in this house cannot understand a language and there's no facilities for translation, is that rule to be in order or should it be scrapped from the Hansard?
Order, honorable members. I'm going to respond to Honorable Murray. Honorable Murray, we have 4 official languages in this province, and one of which is sign language. It's because Afrikaans and English. So what we have done right from the onset, I said we will have translation services which exist. Now it is the ICT that has been consistent in helping us, the unit. The IT unit here in Parliament. So if there were some discrepancies with your device and the translation services, that would be a unique situation. And as a result, it would not be fair to either, for whatever reason, prefer one language over the other one, because all of them are equal in terms of the South African Constitution. But what is important is that we should be able to have access to the translation services. So if there were issues, the ICT will gladly assist with you, with that. I remember in the last sitting, there was a similar matter. Members need to have 2 devices if they wish to ask questions, if they wish to have access to translation services. So I will deal with this matter extensively as per the directives issued by myself on the 17th of April in 2020, which were clear and they are written here in the standing rules. If there are any issues, the ICT will help you. But in this regard, the question has been raised. It's a point of order. The point of order for your purpose, Honorable Murray and other honorable members here, it was asking for the Premier for me to make a determination on the relevance of the response by the Premier pertaining to the question that was asked. So my response to that is very simple. the debate became political and the Premier responded politically. Now, if the question is on the data, on specifics about how many houses you built, how many ministers, you have in your cabinet, he will answer. But that's the risk also of the questions to the Premier without notice. I don't see a potential of these questions not become political. So it's difficult also for any presiding officer. I can take any of the honourable members to come sit here to be able to make a determination that will satisfy all of us beyond reasonable doubt. So I would, of course, ask the Premier to try as best as possible to respond to specifics where the information is available. If not, the Premier still has the opportunity to respond to questions asked. And that is my ruling. Honorable Maseko, your question was, the point of order was that you did not hear. In terms of Rule 40, I wish to request the honorable members, as I've been doing throughout, to really help the presiding officer. And I'm going to ask the whippery. Fortunately, here in the sitting, the chief whip of the majority party is here in the sitting. The deputy chief whip of the majority party is here in the sitting. Similarly, the chief whip of the opposition is here, as well as the deputy chief whip of the opposition. So please help the presiding officer to ensure that there's, there's the decorum that we need in the House. So I'm going to ask the Premier to conclude.
Speaker, I think I did conclude, but maybe in the interests of those that didn't hear, I actually was using an analogy of a car with a flat tire, and saying that in the ANC, when they look at it, they see at one flat tire. Instead of fixing the flat tire on that car, they rather flatten the other 4 tires so it all looks equal. And that's how they approach energy supply in South Africa. That's how they approach safety in South Africa. They really move to the lowest common denominator. But I want to thank the Honourable Barnes for those questions, and I want to say to her that I would really like to hear other examples of safety plans in other provinces that are giving or getting great traction and making the difference, because of course we are always willing to learn. But as far as I know, I don't think any other province.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. The time is up. Thank you, Honourable members. There's no more time. Honourable the Deputy Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, again the Premier veers off, but can you also please educate the Premier on the role of the NCOP, and that both political parties, the ANC and the DA, have delegates to the NCOP. He must ask through those delegates, and he must ask when he sits there in Minmic. When they sit in Minmic, they must raise those questions.
That is not a point of order.
Point of order.
Honourable members, that is not a point of order. Honourable Deputy Chief Whip, you know the rules. That is not a point of order. We, like I said earlier, which I don't want to lecture the honourable members, let us please respectfully help the presiding officer. Now we have reached the end of questions to the Premier without notice. We've taken more time here because of the glitch that existed earlier. I want to apologize to the honourable members who had hoped that they would ask more questions, but that is the end. So hopefully the next opportunity you will be able to do so in just over a week from now. May I then request the honourable members to prepare themselves for member question, for the member statements, and the first member statement is by the DA. I recognize the DA.
Honourable Speaker, today I rise on a matter that might not get as much media coverage as gang violence or the latest ANC corruption scandal, but is of immense importance. The food and mouth disease outbreak across South Africa is a grave threat to not only our food security, but also to particularly our red meat industry as a whole. Where infections break out, quarantine and the banning of exports invariably follow. The jobs supported by the export industry cannot survive if there's no market for even their healthy cattle because of blanket export bans. In our country, with a 45% unemployment rate, we certainly cannot afford to lose any of the jobs that we currently have to a disease that can be effectively dealt with if civil society and government work together. Speaker, in our country, the majority of farm workers are already facing hardship from immensely tough national economic conditions over which they have no control. We cannot allow a foot and mouth disease outbreak to destroy their livelihoods as well. I therefore want to call on all of our farmers to remain vigilant when moving or trading in cattle, to make use of the support offered by your government to stop the spread of this destructive disease. Information on stopping the spread of foot and mouth disease is freely available on government websites. Educate yourself and your workers. Effectively dealing with this outbreak will take an all-of-society approach, and the DA urges everyone to do their part. Let's keep the Western Cape free from foot and mouth disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van der Westhuizen. Now I recognize the ANC. Okay. The ANC.
Speaker, the ANC in this legislature was approached by many fishers from the coastal communities about serious concerns they had with the 2021 fishing rights allocation process. In this instance, it is about ensuring that our coastal communities and small and medium enterprises have access to the marine resource and are able to build sustainable enterprises. We encouraged all individual applicants who had not been successful to submit their individual appeals, but we then also decided that we need to go and engage and listen to our communities and hear the concerns directly. So in July, we went to Mossel Bay, Austin, Cork Bay, and Saldanha. And in this process, we were assisted by two national ANC MPs, Honourable Magata and Honourable Judy Hermans. From that, Speaker, we heard many concerns, the inaccessibility of the electronic application system, in fact, an assumption by the department that small and medium enterprises would be able to do the applications on their own, resulting in them having to pay thousands to consultants. An unfair point system, especially as it affects small and medium enterprises. Some vessels were awarded allocations while they are in fact not operational. Over 100 traditional lionfish rights holders have been excluded from the sector, leaving over 1,000 crew unemployed. Some corporates were in fact topped up, while the SMME sector in the main were not allocated sustainable quotas. So in the letter of appeal that we wrote to the minister, we in fact then made a number of proposals because we believe in cooperative government, in working with our ministers. We proposed that the FRAP 2021 allocations be set aside and the process be taken back to when applications were submitted and a new scoring and weighting mechanism be formulated in line with the policies and also the CS policy submitted to the presidency. Secondly, that pending this process, the rights revert to the 2020 rights registers. In other words, the previous rights registers. The minister then thirdly relooks at all sectors.
Your time is up.
And in this way, we are moving towards finding sustainable solutions as the ANC together with our government.
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. Honorable members, I now recognize the EFF.
Thank you, Speaker. The Economic Freedom Fighters is shocked at the dismissive conduct and behavior of the Western Cape Provincial Minister of Education against grade R teachers who marched against the Department of Assistance on Women's Day. It is important to note that 85% of these teachers are women, and part of their grievances are that they have been working for more than a decade without being made permanent whilst continuing to earn peanuts. Speaker, early childhood development was recently transferred from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Basic Education, and to date, there is no hope that the teachers will be made permanent. The majority of these women are asked to upskill their qualifications to a diploma in ECD, to which they did and ended up with 7 years of study through universities such as Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Despite their working experience over the years and more years of study, they still face the prospect of going into retirement without any retirement fund, as they have been working on contract for the rest of their lives. When they turn to the Western Cape Minister for Education to outline their grievances, instead of showing leadership and telling them what he is doing something about the situation against the powers that be, he instead chose to fold his arms and tell them that they are knocking at the wrong door. Instead of saying, let's hold hands together and approach the national government's Department of Basic Education to make funds available for ECD, he instead told them to go and knock on that door alone, as ECD is not compulsory after all. Such conduct on its own shows that the minister does not care about the struggles of women in general and the importance of ECD in preparing learners for condition the face of the face. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Boche. I now recognize the DA.
Honourable Speaker, even though we are currently on a break from the daily nightmares of rolling blackouts, the need to reiterate and emphasize the importance of exploring alternative energy sources remains a topic of urgency. While President Cyril Ramaphosa has acknowledged the importance of renewables, allegations of fraud, corruption, and mismanagement at Eskom are concerning and will only bring the crawling entity down to its knees. I am, however, delighted to see that the Western Cape government and the Department of the Premier have been at the forefront of a lesser reliance on Eskom by calling for comprehensive energy plans to be considered. Honourable Speaker, the Western Cape government has already introduced a number of initiatives to promote alternative energy sources. A Western Cape Government Energy Summit 2 weeks ago discussed proposals and solutions to combat the ongoing rolling blackouts. The provincial government is also currently collaborating with municipalities to develop strategies for increasing renewable energy implementation on municipal networks. This is for the support of independent power producers' connections to the grid. In South Africa, encouraging and promoting independent power producers is critical. IPPs not only relieve Eskom's burden, but they also assist residents in keeping their lights on. Additionally, the solar photovoltaic technician qualification pilot project was also introduced last week by the Premier, which we will see young people being given the opportunity to develop essential skills that will aid them in the energy sector. I hope, Honourable Speaker, that the ANC feels inspired by these interventions so that they can convince their national counterparts to replicate them on their level. Only then will there be change. I thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. The Honorable Fry. Order, honorable members. The Honorable Fry, it's his first opportunity. It's a maiden speech. And therefore, he deserves, that much support to deliver that speech without any heckling whatsoever. And we all know here in the House. And obviously what we always say is that the maiden speech must not be controversial. I don't think it was. Oh, I'm told that it was, but I think what is important is that we must allow and support the members to do so. And again, welcome, Honorable Fry. And I must also say, Honorable Murray, also welcome. I wasn't here to do so last week, but you were welcomed by this House. Let me do so again here. May I then recognize the good party?
Honorable Speaker, August is nationally regarded as the month of women. We find ourselves looking at the advancement of women's rights. Consider the progress made in ensuring safety and security of women and the girl child, and condemning the slow uptake of legislation that can greatly expedite the security of our mothers, daughters, sisters, grandmothers, and all females in society. Gender-based violence and femicide, domestic violence and abuse are of course some of our greatest considerations for this month, and I stress the fact that we still must go a great deal further for women to attain and adopt all the rights as enshrined in national and provincial legislation. Speaker, women remain left out in all sectors of society. Not enough women occupy boardrooms. Women are not able to start small businesses. The kitchen is still regarded as the only place for a female, and that women must stand in service of men. Can women not own construction companies, logistic operations, provide solutions to micro and macro mobility? Are women not to be at the helm of corporations, occupy seats of power, and frequent corridors of decision-making? We as South Africa and the Western Cape need to review our understanding of the role of females in society. Women must lead the economy, social and fiscal change needed to reposition South Africa in the global world of nations. Good has always been a movement of powerful women. We are led by one. We need South Africa and the patriarchy to adopt a model of placing powerful women at the front. Women Month gives us the opportunity to reset our narrow view that women must always follow. I challenge all institutions of power, public and private, to give rise to the matriarchy and reimagine South Africa under the leadership of women. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable August. Honorable members, I now recognize the ACDP, Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, on behalf of the ACDP, I want to emphasize the importance of libraries in communities. The question I want to pose today is, why is the city of Cape Town closing libraries? Today a reader, tomorrow a leader. This quote by Margaret Fuller puts into perspective the role that libraries play, an integral part in the lives of individuals and also communities. A community library is one of the earliest experiences children have of formal reading. Here they can develop a love for reading, and in doing so start to build their vocabulary that will last them for a lifetime. Technology will always reach for new horizons, but the feel and smell for a book in the hands cannot be duplicated by electronic devices. Libraries are resource centers for research by learners. They assist the projects and provide a meeting place for community hubs. Among the many courses presented are career guidance and basic computer literacy. All this and so much more are available at libraries for our children and our communities. Speaker, library is a safe space where learners can gather after school. It is a place, meeting place, for members with different tastes in music, art, and books. Libraries have Smart Cape, access to the internet at no cost to a member of that library. Smart Cape and communities are available to the public for 45 minutes at no cost. In summary, libraries play a vital role in the lives of the communities they serve. Speaker, our appeal as the ACDP is that despite arguments presented...
Thank you, Honorable Christian. So your time is up.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Democratic Alliance has been overseeing the tendency of mismanagement and poor management in the Western Cape Education Department and has built a legacy of not responding swiftly to allegations of corruption and maladministration at our schools, including the recent cases which are still hanging in the air of Rhodes High School, Golden Grove Primary, and Grove Primary. It is this inaction and slow response to corruption allegations that forced the African National Congress in this House to call on the Public Service Commission to institute an investigation into the allegations of corruption, gross mismanagement, and abuse of power against the principal of Zwanswijk High School near Bergvliet. The PSC has since written to me as the complainant to indicate closure of the investigation, and we welcome this, as the principal was now found guilty and the charge is that the principal is to be dismissed. although the principal has now appealed the dismissal. While we welcome the new MEC's swift response to the corruption allegations at the Norwood Central Primary, which I brought to his attention last week, he must know that there are many other unresolved cases left by his predecessor. And we look forward and we'll send the MEC more information that he has requested. At Heatherlands High School in George, a financial officer misappropriated funds, including rental income and money from the professional rugby players that is unaccounted for. And this is not hearsay, this is from the MEC's written response to my question. We call for a full investigation of the recommendations of the forensic investigation which the MEC refers to, including the recuperation of the stolen funds and opening of criminal charges. Poor management, Speaker, of school hostels, especially at schools for learners with special needs, has also been raised by the Breede Valley Education Forum's memorandum delivered to the WCED. We'll deliver this memorandum to the MEC and ensure that he takes it up, because there's major corruption allegations at Neverhoop Central, for example, which operates 4 bank accounts, Speaker, 4 bank accounts. I thank you.
I now recognize the DA.
Thank you.
Honourable members, order.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As we begin to exit the colder weather of winter, it is time to once again turn our attention towards the issue of water usage in our province. This winter has seen a rainfall that has been heavy at times, but has still been below average levels. This time last year, the province's dams stood at 77% on average. This year, the average is 64%. It goes without saying that if this trend continues, the Western Cape will suffer from a critical shortage of our most valuable natural resource within a few short years. Remember 2018? South Africa is a water scarce country, but the reality of climate change means that the time has come to find innovative and lasting solutions to the problem of ever decreasing rainfall. This is why I am pleased to see that the City of Cape Town has committed itself to ensuring that the production of 300 million more litres of water per day by 2030, and by lessening its reliance on rain-fed dams. The Department of Local Government is monitoring the status of the province's water supply across the board, thus ensuring that the Western Cape government does everything necessary to position itself for the future. However, while long-term solutions for the Western Cape are in place, the best thing that all of us can do in the short term is to reduce our water usage in our daily lives and to be cognizant of the fact that every drop of water is valuable. By working together as a society, we can avert disaster. But we must act today. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable America. Honourable members, I now recognize the FF Plus Akbar Mare. Your microphone is not active.
Sorry?
Honourable Mare, thank you.
Speaker, South Africa has become the happy playground of rapists, murderers, illegal immigrants, zamas, extracting gold and diamonds illegally, and people with evil intent all over the world coming here. Crime has become our worst epidemic. Almost daily, South Africans are shocked by media reports of stabbings at our schools, shootings in townships, cruel neglect of patients at retirement homes and hospitals, gangsterism, burning and destruction of our buses, our trains and properties. Now, aggravating factors are the failure to arrest, charge, and successfully convict these vagabonds. And I appreciate the Premier's safety plan, but I ask him, is it enough? Can it be adapted? Can it be improved, Premier? As Freedom Front Plus MP, I call on the Premier to announce the formation of what is called the bomb squad, an anti-crime bomb squad, like the Springboks do. When it's halftime, they bring on the big guns, people who can extract them from almost a loss to a victory. Speaker, we need the best men and women in this province across all clusters to redesign our risk management strategy, to safeguard our hospitals, our clinics, our schools, our creches, our farms. Bring on this bomb squad, I say, and take the field. We are losing the battle. Let's become more proactive. Let us stop crime electively. Let us start fighting fire with fire. Before crimes are committed, not look for the culprits afterwards. Let us stop evil people from entering our province, living and hiding here and terrorizing us. As a disciplined member, I stand back, Speaker. Thank you.
Baie dankie, Asbare Mare. Honorable members, I now recognize Al Jama, Honorable Brinkes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The Al Jama Party salutes the thousands of women from various cultural, religious, and social backgrounds who marched against the Dompas system imposed on black women and men. The march by these women on 9th August 1956 was also a protest to raise their voices against discrimination, exploitation, and oppression. The 9th of August also marked International Indigenous Day. We further salute women throughout the world who are resisting imperial forces intent to steal their natural resources. We salute the women of Palestine. Palestinians as an indigenous people are dispossessed, disinherited, and expelled from their ancestral lands by Zionism. Al-Jamaa further salutes the women on the Cape Flats and in the townships who are trapped in gang-infested areas riddled with drug merchants. In this Women's Day address, President Cyril Ramaphosa highlighted the fact that taverns and shebeens are springboards for gender-based violence and criminal activities. We call on this provincial government to show genuine compassion for the plight of women where their rights are not respected, sexual harassment and inequalities at their workplace, stop illegal evictions of women living on farms. Women are not safe in public spaces and in their homes. Majority of women still live in poverty and they are unemployed. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brinkes. Honorable members, I now recognize the DA.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, at the Presidential Job Summit in 2018, the Hospital Association of South Africa proposed that the private sector be allowed to train 50,000 nurses in order to tackle the shortage being experienced in the industry. However, last week, the SA Nursing Council prevented private hospitals from bringing more students and delegates to attend the Hospital Association conference. While this action may seem nothing more than surface-level antics, it speaks to a greater issue. Over the past few years, the intake of nurses into the private sector has fallen as a result of changes to program accreditations. This has resulted in fewer private facilities being able to train nurses and assist the public sector in producing the nurses we need to ensure service delivery continues. Already nurses have to work longer hours, which places strain on individuals over a prolonged period of time. At the same time, even if we are able to reverse this trend, we would need the national government to prioritize the development of healthcare professions and improve the opportunities of being employed in the sector. Provincial government budgets have not been adjusted to the growing needs and increased mandates over the years, meaning that the ability to take on new nurses in the future becomes constrained. Honourable Speaker, it is time for the national government in capital letters, to send more funding to provincial departments to enable them to fulfill their mandates effectively. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. Honorable members, that concludes member statements. As per Rule 145, there is an opportunity for the executive to respond with no more than 5 minutes. I now see the hand of the Honorable Minister Menier, and I also see the hand of the Honorable Minister
Can we split the 5 minutes?
Allen. Yes, you are able to split it. So I'm going to take Honorable Menier first, and then you must help me count. Honorable Menier, Honorable Minister Menier.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to begin by thanking the Honourable Khalid Sayed for his compliment in relation to the swift action we will take in the case of Norwood Central Primary. And I'd also like to assure him that we will similarly take swift action in relation to any other cases which he brings to my attention. And of course, we trust that the honourable member will be handing in his 100 lines, which we discussed last week, to you, Speaker, by the end of this session. Which brings me then to the comments made by the Honourable Makamba Botja, who is mistaken. In fact, in my response, in my comments, I recognized the importance of grade R. I recognized and in fact was quoted as saying that grade R is a vital year in preparing learners for the foundation phase. And in fact, this province has made more progress in expanding access to grade R than many other provinces. But I hope that the honourable member would accept that if we are to universalize grade R, then national government will have to step up and provide the required funding for the Western Cape. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now have the Honorable Minister Allen. You have currently used 1 minute, 37 seconds. You may proceed, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Speaker. This is a classic example of cooperation, of working together, what this government has been doing in terms of our Western Cape Safety Plan. So I am delighted to also see young people from Beaufort West, they are the capital of the Karoo. So welkom aan hulle. Ons is bly dat hulle hier is om te sien wat gebeur. So I'm not even going to reply to some of the previous comments or the member statements, but I want to touch on some of it. That, Speaker, I am delighted when I listened to the good statement, because I lead a department that has over 50% female representation. It's led by a female HOD. And we are very clear that when we take away the contribution of women, because women contribute so much to our society, and when we take away that contribution, economies will collapse. Families will be ruined. Streets will be unable to function. And dare I say this, Speaker, this provincial parliament and this provincial government and any government will be unable to function without the input and contributions of women. So we will always fight for women and for their rights. So when I listen to statements that the provincial government needs to show genuine compassion, we are doing that each and every day. When we are out with neighborhood watches, when we are engaging CPFs, when we are engaging stakeholders, we are genuinely compassionate because we know the time is now. We know the time is now, Speaker, and the time of wearing black, is a sense of when will the wearing of black be enough? When will our enough be enough? And we've been saying that. Hence, we are stepping up and we are stepping in when national government is failing. But I found one comment very interesting regarding libraries. And Member Christians, I want to thank you for raising that, because the libraries is very important. And maybe to the colleagues that are heckling, we heard that leaders are readers. And that will be my encouragement to them through you, Speaker, because 102 service points in the city of Cape Town, which includes 101 libraries and 1 satellite library, 109 million visits to libraries between 2011 and 2021, 103 million instances of borrowing audio CDs and books. And this provincial government contribute 24.22% from our provincial library services to the grant budget here in the city of Cape Town to support libraries, because we understand that libraries are a key safe place. And I want to thank Member Christians for raising that as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Is my 3 minutes up?
Yes, it is, Honorable Minister. I see order, Honorable Members. Order. I wanted the Minister to finish, and then I wanted to take your point of order, Honorable Deputy.
No, Chair, I know the MEC is passionate about libraries, though he's not the MEC for cultural affairs, but it's important.
Is that a point?
Yeah,
of
I want to ask a question, because the sitting isn't, I mean, it's not very late, it's 5 o'clock. Could he take a question, please, just on the library, on Plumstead Library, just one question.
No, you can't. Thank you, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip. Thank you. Order, Honorable Members. That concludes member statements. Now we move to motions. Order, Honorable Members. Order, Honorable Members. Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Members, we have now concluded the member statements with that response by Honorable Minister Allen. We now move to notices of motion. In terms of the new rules, as we all know, the motions that have been submitted as notices of motion have been delivered to the Secretary and placed in the order paper. And these motions have been duly submitted and published, as you have seen here in the order paper here below. Now, the motions without notice in terms of Rule 150, all of those motions which are congratulatory in nature and the motions of condolences were presented to the Programming Authority on the 8th of August, and that the Programming Authority agreed on the set of motions. Now, I have been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting of the 8th of August, political parties also submitted the names of the honorable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move such motions. And this has been done in such a way that the names are listed as if the members had delivered the motions here in the House. So I will therefore, just for the noting purposes and of course in our minutes, and just to ensure that I read the members' names, but also the honorable members' names that I'm going to read will be only for the purposes of the motions without notice in terms of the congratulatory and the condolences. The first honorable member is Honorable Christians, ACDP. Second is Honorable Kaiser Philander, DA. The third motion is Honorable Kaiser Philander, DA. That's the second one from the honorable member. The third one is Honorable Masego from the DA. The fifth one is Honorable Masego from the DA. The same honorable member moved two motions. Then the 6th motion is Honorable Barnes from the ANC, and the 7th motion, Honorable Barnes from the ANC. And that's the 7 questions. I now put the motions which were duly submitted and approved by the programming authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections? Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of proceedings and enhanced in each individual member's name, as I indicated, that as if the honorable members read them here in the chamber aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to the honorable members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 150 subsection 2D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the programming authority meeting of the 8th, as I indicated. So the honorable members are reminded that we only have 30 minutes for which we are able to entertain motions. And for that purpose, Rule 150 is going to apply, and the motions and the opportunity starts now. I just need the list of the members. May I please have that list, please? Thank you. All of the motions were submitted, and I wish the members could stick to what has been submitted. If you change it, you're out of order. So the first is Honorable Murray.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that this House consider limiting refreshment served in the members' lounge during cities to only tea and coffee. For the past year, I've noticed that less than 15% of members attend sittings and make use of this privilege and consider incurred expenses to be wasteful. I so move, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. Honorable members, are there any objections? There are objections. The motion will be recorded in the order paper. Thank you, Honorable members. Order, Honorable members. I now recognize Honorable Brenkes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes the importance of National Women's Month and the escalating crime and gender-based violence committed against women. That this House recognizes the National Women's Month also serves as a time to act with compassion, and Al Jamaa calls on the provincial government to increase funding to women's organizations and increase resources at shelters for abused women. I so move. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Motion agreed to. Thank you, Honorable members. I now move to number 3, and that is Honorable Maran.
Thanks very much, Speaker. On behalf of the Congress movement, the African National Congress, a motion without notice, that this House notes with great sense of pride the victory by the ANC's constituency head in Drakenstein, the Honorable Bakubaku force on winning the Nantes farm eviction case in Paarl. The long ongoing battle between Nantes farm owners and workers has seen the light after the court ruled in favor of the workers to remain on the farm in order to be restored to the position it was before. The respondents disturbed the position or possessions on or about 20 November 2021, and that the House congratulates everyone involved for their hard work to restore the dignity of our people, and especially in this case, those farm dwellers. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Maran. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself?
Yes,
no objections.
Object.
Is there a point of order, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition?
Point of order. I noticed that Member Murray raised her hand in objection. So I'm not, and then you proceeded, and then I also heard that Member Murray virtually raised no objection. So does that mean that the DA as well as the Freedom Front are against the rights of farm workers?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable the Leader
Objection,
of the
I never
Opposition.
raised a hand. I don't know which Murray is referring to, but I didn't raise a hand.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Honorable members, thank you. Thank you. I now put the question again. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes.
Who's that?
Van the West Station Chair, because as far as I know, the Honourable was not an applicant in that case.
You have objected, that's fine. All right. Are there any objections to the motion itself?
Yes.
So there's an objection to the motion being moved without without notice, and there's also an objection to the motion itself. So the DA has objected, so we have recorded that. Thank you, honorable members. So the only objection is from the DA. Honorable members, I now move order motion number 5, no, motion number 4. I recognize Honorable Syed.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes and condemns in the strongest possible terms that the House notes and condemns in the strongest possible terms a bombardment by the State of Israel in the Gaza Strip last week, which left 44 innocent people dead, including 15 children. And according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and concurs with the condemnation statement by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, which read, the attacks that kill innocent civilians have no justification, and they are more abhorrent as they are committed by an occupying power which has besieged the Gaza Strip for over a decade in contravention of international law, and calls on the provincial government of the Western Cape to join the national government in condemnation of Israeli atrocities, and on the Speaker to also illuminate the building in black, white, green and red colors in support and solidarity with the Palestinian people. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Syed. Are there any objections?
Speaker, why did you pass?
From order,
Speaker,
honorable members. Order,
Mr.
honorable
Syed.
members. FF Plus, are you also objecting?
No, sir. The motion number 4 is not the one Honorable Member Syed read out. Honorable Member spoke about Palestine. And this number 4 is not about Palestine, but it's about the Western Cape Education Department. So I'm objecting to him moving that motion in slot number 4.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. The grave error on the part of the Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip. It's a number 4 that we are dealing with. But because we have moved your motion, we will deal with number 7 and make it number 4. And because you are the same person that have moved the motion, so which one do you want to prioritize?
No, Chair, if I can just indicate, Chair, we did, as the Whippery, submit to Mr. Pochenpoel that we are withdrawing the motion on the motion number 4. We sent that notice before the section of motions came. The Chief Whip sent that, I've indicated, so we only have that one motion in my name. Thank you.
All right, thank you, honorable members. I was making it easier, but you have simplified it for me. Thank you. May I then, Honorable Murray, do you want to object to the motion? I'm putting the question to the House. Your point of order that you have raised has now been defeated by the explanation from the honorable member who've moved the motion.
Defeated or amended, sir? How can I be defeated on something that's on the order paper?
Your point of order has been somewhat, it does not, it's no longer sustained because the member in question, which is the honorable member or the honorable members, the honorable member who have asked the question has indicated that he is correctly dealing with the right motion, and earlier on he requested that it be prioritized. So the motion number 4 has since been removed by the member himself. He's no longer moving that motion for this sitting. So that is the nature of which your point of order could not be sustained. So we are now at this point where I'm putting the question. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? And that is not in the motion number 7, which is now 4. I put the question, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Mr.
Are
Speaker,
there
I've got a point
any
of order.
objection to the motion itself?
Mr. Speaker, I've got a point of order.
Honorable the Minister of Mobility.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I'm rising on a point of order, and I think I want to latch on to what Honourable Marais is trying to illustrate. So the motion that we are now, that's before this House, is motion number 7. So the motion number 4 was withdrawn. So as per the order paper and the motions, we must first deal with motion number 5 before we get to motion number 7, because there's a time allotted for motions. So there might not have been an opportunity for motion number 7 to be delivered. I think that's
Order, honorable members. Let us allow Honorable Mitchell to finish. Please proceed.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is on a point of procedure, we must first deal with motion number 5 and then 6 and then Honorable Syed's motion if he's withdrawn number 4.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Mitchell. I have dealt with the matter and your point of order falls away. It's not sustained. What I have said in dealing with this matter is that the honorable member withdrew his motion and asked that it be replaced with number 7. So there's no 4 and 7 by the same honorable member. So your point is actually out of order. May I now move order, honorable members? Order. I have explained it here. I have explained it in this sitting. So please, honorable members, our business is still long. We still have a CPA conference, AGM after this session, which I would like to encourage all of you to participate. May I then request, all right, now we move to, there were objections in the motion, and the motion that I've put to the question, there were objections. I know the objection by the DA. I want to know, were there any other objections? On the motion number 7, which is number 4. All right. Then the motion is not, there's an objection and the motion will be written in the order paper. Thank you. I now move to motion number 5 by Honorable Bagubagu Force. Honorable members, who is speaking whilst I'm speaking?
Speaker, as Member Mackenzie, I wanted to draw your attention. Minister Fernandez's hand has been up. You might have missed it.
I see all the hands. I'm not entertaining any points of order on the matter. I've dealt with it and I've dispensed with the matter.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Bagubagu Force.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I now move without notice that the House knows and welcomes the arrest of 5 suspects in connection with multiple gender-based violence and femicide-related crimes along the Garden Road. These arrests, which come during one of the most important months recognized in South Africa as Women's Month, are in fulfillment on this year's theme, which calls for action to all of society. government and partners to take tangible steps forward in responding to the most persistent challenges affecting the lives of women and girls, and commends the SAPS George Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit for making this arrest following a series of investigations that led them to the suspects, including a 28-year-old man suspected to have raped a 13-year-old girl. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Bakubaku Force. Honorable members, I put the question. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections, motion agreed to. Now the next motion is number 6 by Honorable Van Vochen.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC. I move without notice that the House notes the severe shortages of beds at Western Cape Government Hospital, especially Falkenberg Psychiatric Hospital, and reiterate our call to the Western Cape Government thereof to allocate additional resources to eradicate bed and staff shortages, as it cannot be acceptable that a province with a population of around 7 million people only has less than 2,000 beds across this province. And notes further and calls for an integrated approach between the Department of Health, Education and Social Development to address the scourge of substance use disorder in the province, which often results in rise in mental health challenges and subsequently to increase service pressure in psychiatric hospitals, which is a bad reflection of the ongoing drug and alcohol abuse, and often resulting in the high numbers of psychosis. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vochen. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
Object, Speaker.
Thank you. Objection has been noted and the motion will be printed in the order paper. Honorable members, I now move to motion number 8, which will be recorded as a number 7 when we move forward. So number 8 is by Honorable Mvimbi. Honorable Mvimbi? Okay. I now have to move further if the Honorable Mvimbi is not in the house. Honorable members, I now move to motion number 9 in terms of the list that we have here, and that is Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition, Honorable Leke.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move that the House notes that yet another DA leader has been embroiled in another sex scandal, this time being the former official in the Western Cape Provincial Legislature and DA councillor in the city of Cape Town, Mr. Unathi Lassithi, who's facing a sexual assault charge against a junior employee and is now out on R1,000 bail. Notes further that the City of Cape Town Mayor Gideon Hill-Lewis and DA Regional Head Yako Lond are well aware, but they are trying to downplay the matter as an old case. Notes further that the hypocrisy of the DA knows no bounds as it continues to protect its alleged sex predators, and that it seems like the DA is a hub for men like this, and that the rot of GBV is deeply entrenched. I repeat, the rot of GBV is deeply entrenched in its DNA. Calls on the MEC Allen to deploy court-watching briefs to monitor the case of Unathi Lassithi and for the immediate suspension of Unathi Lassithi pending the investigation into his sexual assault case. Yelekama object.
Order, honorable members, there is an objection. Order. Order, honorable members. Objection has been noted and the motion will be printed in the order paper. I now move to question number 10 by Honorable Clerk.
Thank you, Somlo. I move without notice that the House note the recent report from SASSA outlining that 60% recipients of social relief of distress grant are young people. Although this does not surprise us as the EFF, but it paints a very sad and a bad picture about the situation young people find themselves in. These are the people who should be driving our economy, but in this current regime, they are made to depend on the state of handouts. The recent studies show that 80% of the unemployed young people in South Africa have to choose between looking for work or buying food wherever they have a penny. What is more concerning is that more than 600,000 applicants are from individuals with a tertiary level of education, meaning that even those who are educated are still made to depend on the state of regime, cannot create employment opportunities for them. I so move, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kleko. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objection. Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections, motion agreed to. Now I recognize Honorable Kleko again. On
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House knows that seasonal farm workers in the Didorens area have been queuing for months outside the Satellite Department of Labor office for the UIF payouts with little to no assistance at all from the department. These workers rely on these UIF funds during the months when they are not working. On a daily basis, the department's officials will assist only a handful of these people, only to come again later to tell the rest that they must go home because they are offline. Here, we're talking about poor people without permanent jobs, earning low wages, seasonal work, who are mostly subjected to all forms of abuse and brutal treatment from farm owners. They are now suffering double jeopardy when they turn to the state for the UIF payouts to which they are entitled to. As the EFF, we call for an accountable government that is responsive and care for those who find themselves in the destitute conditions. We so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kleko. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Are there no objections to the motion itself? No objections, motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Makamba Poja. Honorable Makamba Poja.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of Economic Freedom Fighters, I move without notice that the House notes that the 9th of August 2022 marked Women's Day within a Women's Month. It was a day when women from all fronts were celebrated for their struggle and achievements stemming from the past, including against colonialism, apartheid, and all forms of oppression. The heroines of the past showed great strength and courage in fighting against all sorts of oppression directed at them solely for being women. As women, we must unite and draw leaf from those who before us and continue to fight old and new challenges that still continue today, which includes inequality, patriarchy, gender-based violence, and femicide. We must fight for a society environment where women will not be asked for favors on intimate nature whenever they apply for jobs or opportunities. I so move.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections, motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Makamba Pocha again.
Ngozi Somlomo, on behalf of economic freedom fighters, I move without notice for the House to note that the Delft community is mourning the death of a 15-year-old girl who was shot dead in a crossfire between rival gang members on a Women's Day. This on its own depicts a picture of decaying society where a girl child is not safe. It also paints a picture of dysfunctional state where anarchy prevails and where marauding gangs operate with impunity. Society have lost faith as more money is being spent on dysfunctional policing systems in every level of government. We have now reached a point where no one is allowed to stand up and brag that they are doing something about crime, because reality shows that nothing is being achieved. I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Pocha. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Motion agreed to. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move without notice that the House commends the Carte Blanche Making a Difference Trust for raising funds to refurbish Tygerberg Hospital's neonatal and pediatric care units. This will greatly empower the hospital to continue delivering the quality healthcare services to the community. Tygerberg provides healthcare to over 50% of the province's children and also supports more than 7,000 births annually. Honorable Speaker, we hope that such partnerships further embolden our all of society efforts and good governance. I so move, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now move to number 15, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Honorable Batman.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move that this House commends Ms. Chevrolet Sass from Beaufort West for organizing 3 successful constitutional rights workshops with youth from the community and encourages her and the team to continue empowering young people on local, provincial, and national government programs and issues that directly affect them. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip. I now put the question. Are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objection. Motion agreed to. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Fry. Honorable Fry.
Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move without notice that this House commends the Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, and the Economic Opportunities and Finance Department Minister, Mireille Wenger, for helping launch the new solar photovoltaic qualification through the Premier's Council on Skills program. That this House recognizes the essential knowledge and skills that this qualification will give young people, as well as the enormous impact it will have on the national and provincial energy industry. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Fry. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
Object.
Who's objecting?
Ms. Clark will objecting.
Honorable Peg. Okay, honorable members, there is an objection and therefore the motion will be written in the order paper. Honorable Fry. Honorable members, order. I now recognize order, honorable members. I know that we're dealing with motions, but please be nice. Even when the honorable member does the member statement, but this is also a precursor to that. Honorable Murray is doing the motion for the first time here now, and I wish to afford the opportunity to do so. Honorable Murray.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that this House commends the management of the Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden on receiving the TripAdvisor's Traveller's Choice Best of the Best Award for 2022. and also acknowledge the support provided by the Kirstenbosch Gardens Botanical Society and their branch there, noting that the award is one of the highest achievements of excellence in the tourism industry and places the popular Cape Town-based garden attraction in the top 1% of tourist attractions worldwide, which enhances the reputation of the Western Cape as a must-visit destination. Further notes that the garden both protects and fosters awareness of our province's unique biodiversity and in particular, its floral kingdom. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. What's the point of order, Honorable the Leader
Point
of
of
the
order is
Opposition?
just to ask whether, Honourable Speaker, DA members are allowed to move motions in support of national government institutions like Kirstenbosch, which is national government run. Are they
Thank
allowed
you.
to do that?
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. That is not a point of order, but it's a point of appreciation. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. I must say that that ends it on a good note. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No. Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Motion agreed to. Honorable members. Honorable members, that concludes. Order, honorable members, you can do it outside. That order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you. Now, that concludes the motions. And that also concludes order, honorable members. You want me to keep you here until tomorrow, Honorable Maran and Honorable Premier? Order, honorable members. I know the excitement. I know. Yes. We have now reached the end of our sitting, but I want to make the announcement. Order, honorable members. Order. We have the CPA AGM that's about to start. And I would like to request the honorable members, because we're going to start immediately after this sitting. We're just going to take a body break for 5 minutes and then come back. It should not take us long. I know there's other commitments from the honorable members immediately after the sitting, but let us come back for the CPA session. Yeah, we're just gonna take 5 minutes and then come back. It could be 5 minutes or less just to stretch. And as I do so, I want to order honorable members. I have not blown the whistle yet. I need to end the meeting officially. I would like to thank the stakeholders from Beaufort West. I see young people up there who traveled all the way. Can you please put our hands together for them? And we want to say Bayadangba, that the Platteland is no here. Also, Witzenberg, that was here earlier. They since left. We thank them that they've come here. Because we know it's far in Cape Town, but we want the Platteland to know this too is their parliament. They too, this is their parliament. So thank you very much, and thanks to Honorable Batman because you invited them for the parliamentary session. Thank you for involving them in our decision-making and public participation processes. Now that reaches the end of the session. The House is adjourned. Thank you very much. Let's see each other in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. May God bless you.